got a thing that's based on a kind of Latin rhythm known as the bossa nova. But it is not really a bossa nova, but we think that you will dig this because this is the bossa nova. But it is not really a bossa nova, but we got a thing that's based on a kind of Latin rhythm known as the bossa nova. But it is not really a bossa nova because this is a kind of Latin rhythm bossa nova. This is a kind of Latin rhythm known as the bossa nova.
Welcome. Welcome to Moorish Talk Live 100. I'm your host, Tarhaka Amana LB, and tonight we'll be dealing with part 1, the first peoples on the lands of the Americas. Now, keep in mind that it's going to take us a minute to lay this out for you point by point. So we decided to start and do part 1 first. And we'll come back with part 2, and hopefully we should be able to finish up by part 3. I got to spread it out that way. That'll give me a chance to put out everything that you need to see and hear and research for yourself, to the point where you don't need someone to come to you and tell you nothing about who you is. Okay? So I think this is fair. I think it's a wonderful thing, because all too often we go places. And when I say we, I'm talking about people who actually believe that they are black people. There's no such thing. Or Negro, colored, or African American. There's no such thing. So, or you are a minority. No, you're not. You have always been a majority. Now, what we're going to do today is to provide you with proof for investigation. I don't want you to take my word for it, okay? A lot of us believe that there is a place called Africa. There is no such place. Prior to the 1600s, there was no such thing as a place called Africa. There are people today living on the continent who don't know nothing about a place called Africa. I'm sorry, this is shocking information. I know it's shocking, but what we're going to do is we're going to lay it out, and so you can see it for yourself. There's no such thing as an African American or Negro or colored. You always been here. This is your land. You always been home. You don't need to go nowhere to prove to nobody about nothing about your identity. You always been who you always were and where you always have been. And I know this is quite shocking to a lot of people. But nevertheless, tonight we're going to deal with the first peoples of the lands of the Americas. Now, what I would like for you to do is get your paper and pencil so you can write down this information, and you can go ahead and see it for yourself. You can take your time, you can do an investigation, you can do this, you can do that, and the other. Also, let me bring this to your attention. This is very, very critical for you to understand. They have just passed a law. Now, we're going to get here in a minute to tell you the difference between legal, illegal versus the law. But what they have done is said, now in the state of Florida, where I reside, we'll deal with that. There's no such place. But anyway, we'll deal with that. I'll show you how to do that. But anyway, you do not have to have a license to carry a concealed weapon. Your weapon must be concealed. It can't be out in the open. And then you, before you even use your weapon, you had to almost get killed before you try to use it. It's amazing. This is the most amazing thing that I've ever seen in my life. But nevertheless, the place that you call Florida, which is Florida State, not the State of Florida Corporation. I was involved in that. But Florida State has said that you do not have to have a license to carry a weapon. Okay? That's what they'll, and then they'll turn around and call it the law. Amazing. Isn't that interesting? Okay, first of all, let's deal with the law. Okay, I'm going to show you how this thing works, man. If you take a rock, put it in your hand, close your hand, hold that rock over your head, open your hand and turn it loose, the rock falls down because of the laws of gravity. That's the law. If you're in your car and you are driving down the highway and you see a sign marked 30 miles an hour around the curve, and you try to go around the curve at 90 miles an hour, you are going to break the law of centrifugal force, and it will kill you. That's the law. Now, they told me one time, and me and the judge in the courtroom, I asked him, I said, would you be kind enough to give me the opportunity to come in this courtroom, which wouldn't have took me no more than 15 minutes, man, to lay on the table the difference between legal and illegal versus the law. Do you know what they told me? They told me to say, well, look, you got 13 different charges. I don't know where that came from. And you're going to have to come down here 13 different times to try to deal with this. That's what they told me. They will not allow me to stand right where I'm standing and put on the table at point blank range. Immediately, the law. They wouldn't let me do that. But nevertheless, what I want you to do is get your paper and pencil out, and I'm going to show you something, and I want you to check this thing out for yourself. I want you to take my word for anything. I want you to do an investigation. Now, if you're going to do an investigation, you need you know what you can be doing an investigation on. Now, in order for you to do that, the first thing I need you to do is to understand that you don't have to believe anything anybody telling you without investigation. Investigate stuff for yourself. Take it out for yourself, man. So you come to conclusions based on your own personal investigation. Don't take my word for nothing. Now, my position is this. Number one, there's no such thing as black people. That's number one. Number two, there never was and never ever in the history of the world ever been no such thing as Negro, colored, African American, none of that. You follow me? That's my position. You are on a place that a lot of people labeled a long time ago called Turtle Island. That's where you at. This is your home. I didn't come from someplace else on a slave ship to be where I am today. I have always been home. My family have always been here. We have always been home. I know this is shocking to a lot of people. We're right here on Turtle Island. We've always been here. We've always been here. There have been a few people that came from someplace else, but the majority of people who look like me and you have always been here. This is your home. You didn't come from someplace else. I know this is quite shocking for a lot of people. A lot of people are in a state of shock because they've been going around where, slavery, when slavery happened and something, no. If I can get you to believe that you're somebody else and that you came from someplace else, I can rule over you for the rest of your natural life. Well, the jig is up tonight. We ain't doing it. It's all over. Were there Egyptians in America? Yes. Was it ever a place called America? The answer is no. If there are people in this country Native Indians, the answer is no. No. What about the people in North Africa calling themselves Egyptians? First of all, there's no such place, no such people as the ancient Egyptians in Africa. They never called themselves that. They never did. This was something that someone else, a label that someone else put on these people. There are pyramids all over the America. We're going to deal with that tonight. Been here for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. North America, Central America, South America, and all down, all over the place. Been there all along. But what we have been doing is we have been listening to and trying to learn over it and around it and under the bottom of it and to appease somebody who has already mislabeled you. If you go look at the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, it will tell you that everybody have a right to a nationality. It will tell you that. And when somebody violates your nationality, that ranks with genocide and treason. But most of us don't know that because we won't do any research. We won't think for yourself. We sit down and we let people tell us different things. the jig is up tonight. But nevertheless, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to get down into this thing, and y'all hold on a minute. I'm your host, Tarhaka, and tonight we're dealing with the first people on the lands called the Americas. We're going to deal with subjects like where did life begin on Earth? I was asked that one time. Do you believe that civilization started in Africa? You have to say yes. Yes, it did. And where else did it start? We're gonna deal with that too. What was the first of the lands to rise? From where? Who was here before Columbus? Were there writings and languages before the so-called Egyptians? Is there evidence of ancient Egyptians in the Americas? We're going to deal with that. Now, I won't be able to cram everything in tonight. However, we're going to get the stuff, and the phone lines will be shut down. The chat room will be closed. I don't want to waste no time. We have too much information to deliver. Who are the original native people in the United States of America? We're going to deal with that. Was the lands on Earth one landmass at one time? We're going to deal with that. What is tricknology? We're going to deal with that. Are the Moors native to the Americas? We're going to deal with that. Okay? We'll deal with it. All right. Y'all hold on a minute. We will be right
Hello,
back.
everybody. It's me again, Tarhaka. America is experiencing some tough times today, but there's a way out for you. All you have to do is get into the private, live out your days as a secured party and a creditor, instead of living as a debtor. I'll show you how. Visit tarhaka.elimination.org. My contact information is there. It has to be tough struggling, trying to make ends meet. But as a secure party and creditor, life's a little bit sweeter. All your bill collectors got you listed as a debtor. Let's turn this thing around. tarhaka.elimination.org. Peace.
Okay, everybody, we're back. Now, to say a little bit about that, when you come here to my location or my domicile, you stand right out in front of where I am. There is no address. Ain't nothing for you to write down about an address that does not exist. You can walk all the way around the house, you won't see it. There's a reason for that. We have two things in the United States. If you believe there's a such place, it's called public, and then there's private. And that deals with the law, which is a whole different ball game. But nevertheless, I want you to get your paper and pencil handy. I want you to write down the name of a man. The man's name is Louis Agassiz. A lot of people call it Agassiz. Louis-Agassiz. Write that down and get up there and check it out. Now, what I want to do, I'm going to spend this little bit of time now to give you a little breakdown on this particular man. This will last about 6 minutes and 18 seconds just on his credentials, and after that, then we will go into what he actually done or what he tried to do before the United States of America attacked him to shut him up about the truth. So I need you all
Louis
to hold
Agassiz
on
was a Swiss-born biologist, physician, geologist, teacher, and, most notably, a pioneer in the area of natural science research. His seminal study on glacier activity and extinct fishes were groundbreaking contributions. Agassiz grew raised in Switzerland and went on to become a professor of natural history at the University of Neuchâtel. Later, he obtained a seat at Harvard University, where he rose to prominence for his unique teaching technique, which revolutionized natural science education in the United States. Louis Agassiz was born on May 28, 1807 in Moutier, Fribourg, Switzerland. It is the country's western, French-speaking region. His father, Jean-Louis Rodolphe, was the last in a line of 7 Protestant pastors who instilled in him religious values. Rose Mayer Agassiz, Louis's mother, fostered his interest in science. Louis was homeschooled at first and later proceeded to Bayonne to complete his 4 years of secondary school. He finished his education at the Lausanne Academy. He pursued medicine as a vocation and studied at the universities of Zurich, Heidelberg, and Munich. He did, however, broaden his knowledge by studying natural history, notably botany. Erlangen awarded him the Doctor of Philosophy degree in 1829. He got another doctoral degree, Doctor of Medicine, the following year at Munich. On December 16, 1831, Agassiz traveled to Paris, where he met Alexander von Humboldt and Georges Cuvier, who became his mentors and were responsible for establishing his geology and zoology careers, respectively. While his prior studies had not been centered on ichthyology, the field of zoology that deals with fishes, it was soon to become the focal point of his life's work. Agassiz had 2 marriages. His first wife died in Switzerland, leaving him with 3 children. In 1850, he married for the second time to Boston-born college instructor Elizabeth Cabot Carey. After settling in the United States, his 2 daughters and son, Alexander, joined him. After the death of Cuvier, one of Europe's most recognized naturalists at the time, and with von Humboldt's assistance, Agassiz got a teaching position at the University of Neuchâtel in Switzerland, not far from his birthplace. For the following 13 years, he spent the most of his time focusing on various paleontology, systematics, and glaciology projects. Through these writings, he became a staunch supporter of the hypothesis that the Earth had experienced an ice age. From 1833 to 1843, he produced his 4-volume book Recherches sur les Poissons fossiles, which compiled information on over 1,700 fossil fishes at the time. The book, which was mostly drawn by Joseph Dinkel, acted as a catalyst for subsequent study into extinct species of all types. In the years 1842 to 1846, Agassiz was in Neuchâtel and produced his Nomenclator Zoologicus. It was a massive categorized inventory of every genus and subgenus name published in zoology since Linnaeus' time. Agassiz's need for financial aid grew as his descriptive work progressed. Fortunately, the British Association stepped into aid, as did the Earl of Ellesmere, also known as Lord Francis Egerton. Agassiz was given the Wollaston Medal by the Council of the Geological Society of London in 1836 for his work on fossil ichthyology. He was elected as a foreign member of the Royal Society 2 years later. Agassiz broadened his interest and research to include invertebrates. In 1837, he worked on the prodrome, a thorough study of current and fossil marine organisms known as echinodermata such as sea stars, sea urchins, sand dollars, and sea cucumbers. The first installment was released the following year. The second portion was published by Agassiz between 1839 and 1940, and the Critical Studies on Fossil Mollusks was published between 1840 and 1845. Agassiz visited the United States in the fall of 1846, thanks to a grant from the King of Prussia. His dual goals were to study the natural history and geology of North America and to give lectures at the Lowell Institute in Boston on invitation from John Amory Lowell. His talks were so successful that he was subsequently given a chair at Harvard University, which he accepted because of the scientific and financial benefits the job provided. He settled in Boston and lived there till the rest of his life. Agassiz was named a foreign honorary member of the American Academy of Arts and Sciences in 1846. Agassiz was one of the first American biologists to achieve worldwide acclaim. He had the opportunity to train future renowned scientists at Harvard and was possibly the most influential man in the 19th century on the future trajectory of American biology and geology. He was well known at Harvard for his Ice Age speculations and his refusal to embrace the theory of natural selection. Agassiz's Lowell Institute lecture engagements led to the formation of the Lawrence Scientific School at Harvard University in 1847, of which he was the head. He created the Museum of Comparative Zoology in 1859 at Harvard, where he was named zoology and geology professor, and served as its first director until his death in 1873. Agassiz worked as a non-resident professor at Cornell University while teaching at Harvard. In 1852, he obtained a position teaching comparative anatomy in Charlestown, Massachusetts. He did, however, retire after just 2 years of teaching. His scientific studies ended about this period, yet he remained a significant impact on many subsequent renowned scientists. In his honor, Henry Wadsworth, a close friend, penned the 50th birthday of Agassiz in 1857. Agassiz became unwell in the 1960s and chose to return to the field for leisure as well as to restart his study of Brazilian fish. In 1868, an account of one of his adventures, a trip to Brazil, was published. Agassiz returned to South America a few years later, in 1871 to explore the Magellan Strait on its southern Atlantic and Pacific seaboards. Charles Darwin commended this voyage, despite the fact that Agassiz was the former's lifelong opponent on the idea of evolution. During his latter years, Agassiz strove to create a permanent school for the study of zoological science. In 1873, a private donor named John Anderson gifted him the island of Penakees in Buzzards Bay, Massachusetts, together with $50,000 to create a practical school for the study of marine biology. It failed, however, not long after Agassiz died on December 14, 1873, at the age of 66. Agassiz made several scientific contributions. Nonetheless, he was modest about his accomplishments when he stated in 1869, "I have spent my whole life to the study of nature, and yet a single syllable may represent everything that I have done. All I've proved is that there is a correlation between the succession of fishes in geological time and the various phases of their formation in the egg."
Okay. All right. So now we got the gentleman's credentials and this, that, and the other. But what I want to do is I want you to hear something, which is, in my personal opinion, is very extraordinary from a young man and his mama sitting down based on the research that they did. Not me. They did. Okay? I want you to listen to what they have to say. All right? Okay. Now, y'all got to excuse me. I had to go there and get this stuff and put it out there, but it's okay. And we ready to roll on and bring it on over to the table so you can hear for yourself. But in the meantime, what we're going to do is just hold on one second. Here we go. There we go. Now we was talking about Agassiz, and we're going to get to the young man that I was telling you about, him and his mama. We're going to get to that. But in the meantime, let's finish up with Agassiz. Okay? Let's finish that up. Hold on.
I want to show you some things that I don't think you even knew existed. It goes against everything Manifest Destiny teaches about Native Americans. And I want you to know this part of our history because people erased it. And we'll get to that later on in the program. Erased it intentionally. Erased it intentionally. That's an important part of it.
Hawa. What's up, family? Thank you for being here once again. I hope you like this new series that I'm bringing to you guys, The Untold Ancient American Truth. There's going to be so many parts of this because there's so many different topics, there's so much information, and just like Glenn Beck just told us, a lot of this has been intentionally erased and intentionally left out of the school textbooks, so you know nothing about this information. You assume everything has already been studied, that it has been taught, that it has already been discussed and explained. But like Bob said, right? Half the story has never been told. So now you see the light. Oh, stand up for your right. Alright, so in this first part, what I want to show is some information I found here, and it's actually from a person named Agassiz. I'm gonna let you know who he is. He's actually one of the most renowned and respected, geologists that has existed, basically. So we're going to talk about what he has to say about America and how it is the true old world. Alright? We're also going to read from a book I found. I thought it was really good. And we're going to start reading from the book, Traditions of the Earliest Visits of Foreigners to North America by Reuben Duret. And we're going to go to page 70 here, as it says here on the top, Traditions of the Earliest Americans. thus America the oldest of the continents. After the discovery by Columbus in the latter part of the 15th century, it was customary to speak of the Eastern Hemisphere as the Old World and the Western as the New. No one seemed to care how long the Western Hemisphere may have existed before this discovery. The discovery was new, and therefore the country was deemed new also. After the discovery by Columbus made it known, many alleged discoverers, before unheard of, came into existence from different nations. Besides the 6 discoveries set forth in this article, there were Arabians and Italians and Dutch and Poles, Japanese, Jews, we're talking about Hebrews, and others who laid claim to this honor. None of these, however, could make out a satisfactory claim to its discovery, and it may not have been possible to satisfy all doubts in any one case. We knew that the Eastern Hemisphere existed and had existed for thousands of years, but disregarding the claims of some of the ancients, we did not certainly know of the Western world until it was discovered by Columbus, and as the discovery was new, the country discovered was called new also. Alright, so it says they actually disregarded the claims of some of the ancients. And again, we've been also referencing that, when they're talking about their mythos or their mythology or religion, ancient accounts, like I'm talking about the Egyptians and Babylonians and Assyrians, they're really talking about, as Ignatius Donnelly says, Atlantis or the Atlantis gods, or what happened in America in ancient times, the true old world. Alright, so they disregarded those claims of some of these ancients. We have no certain way of arriving at the age of continents or of determining the relative age of any one of them, especially if the age is to be calculated in years. Geologists get over the difficulty of estimating in years by the use of such terms as eras, ages, periods, epochs, etc. They will tell you what geological age a thing belongs to by the fossils embedded in it, but when they undertake to tell the year in which anything existed, it is by estimation only. Alright, so they're letting you know that they can't really ever tell the exact year that something is. They give it, they reference it by epochs and eras, right? Like they say the Pleistocene era, right? So they don't know what exact year. He's basically letting you know. It's all guess and estimation only. Professor Taylor estimated that the North American continent had existed between 100 and 400 millions of years since it was prepared for life, since plants and animals began to be developed and live upon it. To say nothing of 400 million years, 100 millions present a period of which the human mind can have no rational conception. He's basically saying, how can we really know and understand the difference between 400 million years and 100 million years? Once it's past a certain age, once it passes a certain point, we're just like, okay, yeah, that was a long time ago. Do we really understand? That's what he's basically saying. Can we really have a rational conception of chronology and time? We could form quite as just a conception of 400 million as of 100 million. Both terms suggest an incomprehensible duration of time. It probably makes no difference, therefore, whether we designate this period as 400 million or 100 million or 1 million, or even a less number of years. There's no danger of an error being discovered in the addition, because there has been no fixed unit to start from in estimating the existence of a continent in years, and possibly can be none. Alright, so there's real no way to basically let you know how old a continent is. So that goes with all continents. So who's to say, Africa's older? Who's to say Australia's older? Who's to say Europe's older? Asia, right? Alright, so who's to say America's not older or as old, right? If, however, it has been between 100 million and 400 million of years since animals and plants began life in America, how long did America exist before it was fit for the life of man? If the theory of the nebulous origin of the Earth be correct, quite as long as a period may have been necessary for the central nebulous mass out of which our solar system was evolved to break up into sections, and for these sections to whirl around in space until they were consolidated into worlds. Alright, so let's dodge the hijack with the whole space thing. Alright, gotta be firm, right, grounded, have a clear perspective and orientation, or are you still spinning on a ball? Alright, so continue. Says, our planet probably acted in common with others until cooling formed a crust sufficiently strong for an ocean bed over its internal fires, and rains to descend from an atmosphere which held them in suspension, until they covered the crust with the waters of a universal ocean. Then it began to act for itself by eroding this crust and contracting from further cooling, until it pressed the sides of sections of the crust upon one another and crushed and pushed them upward in the confusion of a crumpled, peaked, and valleyed mountain range. Such were the first mountains of the earth, and they formed the nucleus of the North American continent, along the line which separates the United States from Canada. So they're saying that the oldest mountains of the world have this kind of description, formation, etc. And it's found in North American continent too. So it is known as the Laurentian Range, and it is made up of the first metamorphosed sedimentary rocks that were formed. It extended from the Atlantic Ocean on the east along the trend of the St. Lawrence River and the lakes westward beyond the Mississippi River, nearly to the subsequent erected Rocky Mountains, a distance of some 2,000 miles in length and 300 miles in width. This continent may have been outlined beneath the universal ocean long before its upheaval, but this was its first appearance above the water, and it was before any one of the other continents made its appearance above the sea. Again, they're talking about North American continent, right? It says this continent may have outlined beneath the universal ocean long before its upheaval, but this was its first appearance above the water. And what does it say? It was before any one of the other continents made its appearance above the sea. Talking about America. As it first appeared, America was a mass of metamorphic rocks, contorted and crumpled and twisted and jumbled into a shape which had nothing of the appearance of suitableness for plant or animal life. It would require much time after this bleak and barren assemblage of rocks got above the water for them to expand into a continent and assume a fit form for the habitation of man. It had to go through the long years of the Silurian, Devonian, Carboniferous, Triassic, Jurassic, Cretaceous, and possibly into the Tertiary period before it could be ready for human life. It, however, got the start of other continents, and there is no good reason for supposing that it did not continue in the lead until it became the habitation of the original man. Alright, are we talking about Adam and Eve, the terrestrial paradise where the original man was? And we're talking about that North America, right, had a start before the other continents. Before the other continents. So why wouldn't it have the first people? That's what he's basically saying. There is reason, therefore, for believing that the existence of the Earth from its nebulous stage to the beginning of the Azoic Age was as long as from its beginning in the Azoic to the Psychozoic Age, and if this be so, another fearful period of from 100 to 400 millions of years would have to be added to the entire duration of the Earth. Such figures, however, are about as reliable as counting the sands of the seashore without seeing them, so it's not reliable. It has recently, however, been contended by some of the most eminent of geologists that North America was the first of the continents. Again, it has recently, however, been contended by some of the most eminent of geologists that North America was the first of the continents. In the Canadian Geological Surveys, the earliest sedimentary rocks were found in the Laurentian Mountains. And as no older rocks have been found anywhere, America was pronounced the firstborn of the continent. Again, America was pronounced the firstborn of the continents because they found, again, the earliest sedimentary rocks in the Laurentian Mountains in Canada. And as no older rocks have been found anywhere in the world, this is in Canada, people, America was pronounced the firstborn of the continent. Louis Agassiz, and speaking of America, as the oldest of the continents, grew eloquent and expressed himself in his Geological Sketches, Volume 1, page 1, and paragraph 1 in the following language. And we got this in the ancient Masonic teachings books, right? They were quoting him, and this is what is being quoted again. So as you can see, I'm not the only one saying America is the true old world. Now, who is Louis Agassiz? So it says here, Jean-Louis Rodolphe Agassiz, May 28, 1807, and died December 14, 1873, was a Swiss-American biologist and geologist recognized as an innovative and prodigious scholar of Earth's natural history. All right? Prodigious scholar of Earth's natural history. Is this pseudo? You know what I mean? This is actually a verifiable source, a scholarly source. Agassiz grew up in Switzerland, and he studied and received Doctor of Philosophy and medical degrees at Erlangen and Munich, respectively. After studying with Cuvier and Humboldt in Paris, So Humboldt is another explorer, a chronicler, a famous historian source, also quoted in many books as a source for the New World, right? America, in those times of discovery. Says Agassiz basically studied with them, right? Agassiz was appointed professor of natural history at University of Neuchâtel. After visiting Harvard University mid-career, he emigrated to the United States in 1847 and became professor of zoology and geology at Harvard, and to head its Lawrence Scientific School and found its Museum of Comparative Zoology. Agassiz is known for his regimen of observational data gathering and analysis. He made vast institutional and scientific contributions to zoology and geology and related areas, including writing multi-volume research books running to thousands of pages. He is particularly known for his contributions to ichthyological classification, including of extinct species, and to the study of geological history, including to the founding of glaciology. In the 21st century, his resistance to Darwinism, evolution, and the scientific racism implicit in his writings on human polygenism has tarnished his reputation and led to controversies over his legacy. So he went against the Darwinism evolution because he knew better. He did research. He saw it didn't fit with what he was finding, right? And the history and his science and the geology and everything he was researching and studying. All right, so he becomes controversial, and this basically takes him out of our textbooks. Have you ever heard of Louis Agassiz? Have you ever heard of Louis Agassiz? Because as you can see here, let me just zoom in a little bit, right? This is Louis Agassiz, again, Geological Sketches, 1866, this version of it, and we're going to go right to, basically, it's right in the beginning almost, and it says here, contents, page 1, volume 1, America the Old World, America the Old World, again, firstborn among the continents, firstborn among the continents, though so much later in culture and civilization than some more recent birth, America, so far as her physical history is concerned, has been falsely denominated the New World. Again, has been falsely falsely denominated the New World. This is not the New World. This is the true Old World. Hers was the first dry land lifted out of the waters. Hers, the first shore washed by the ocean that enveloped all the earth beside. And while Europe, listen to this, while Europe was represented only by islands rising here and there above the sea, oh, sorry about that, America already stretched in an unbroken line of land from Nova Scotia to the far west. Again, America, the Old World. All right. So continuing in this book, right, it says here, the next chapter, America, the first inhabited of the continent. Okay. So it was the belief of the wise Thomas Jefferson that America was the first seed of the human race, and that the Eastern Hemisphere was peopled from the Western. A letter written by him to President Stiles of Yale College in 1786, while he represented the United States at the court of France, was published in the American Museum for November 1787, page 492. Go verify the source. From this letter, the following extract is taken, clearly stating Mr. Jefferson's belief that the first inhabitants of Asia, who so much resembled the American Aborigines, went from America to Asia instead of coming from Asia to America. Again, it says here that Mr. Jefferson believed that the first inhabitants of Asia, who so much resemble the American Aborigines, and we ain't talking about the what you think of a Chinese person of today, or any of the light-skinned Mongol-looking, Siberian-looking Asians, but we're talking about the original Negroid, right? Negritos, they call them, in the Philippines and the Malays. You know, all this is Asia too, and they do resemble the American Aborigines. And it says here that they actually went from America to Asia instead of coming from Asia to America. I return you my thanks for the communication relative to the Western country. When we reflect how long we have inhabited those parts of America which lie between the Allegheny and the ocean, that no monument has ever been found in them which indicate the use of iron among its aboriginal inhabitants, that they were as far advanced in arts, at least, as the inhabitants on the other side of the Allegheny, a good degree of infidelity may be excused as to the new discoveries which suppose regular fortifications of brickwork to have been in use among the Indians on the waters of the Ohio. Entrenchments of earth they might indeed make, but bricks is more difficult. The art of making it may have preceded the use of iron, but it would suppose a greater degree of industry than men in the hunter state usually possess. I should like to know whether General Parsons himself saw actual bricks among the remains of fortifications. I suppose the settlement of our continent is of the most remote antiquity. The similitude between its inhabitants and those of the eastern parts of Asia render it probable that ours are descended from them or they from ours. The latter is my opinion, that they are from ours. Founded on this single fact, among the red inhabitants of Asia, there are but few languages radically different. All right, so listen to this. But among our Indians, the number of languages is infinite, and we've gone over this in other presentations, right? And there was more languages here in the Americas, more dialects than in Africa. And they say Africa has, hundreds of languages. There's more languages than in the Congo region in America. All right, you can go and research that. All right, so he's saying here that, in Asia, there are a few radically different languages, but among the Indians, the number of languages is infinite, which are so radically different as to exhibit at present no appearance of their having been derived from a common source. The time necessary for the generation of so many languages must be immense. All right, there's a long history of habitation here. Mr. Jefferson gave the best reason he could for his belief that the first inhabitants went from America to Asia instead of coming from Asia to America. Since his time, however, scientific research in its wonderful progress has developed other reasons for the truth of this theory. Scientists have exhumed in America the skeletons of past geological ages and the remains of dead human beings, which gave evidence of as early existence here as any yet found outside of America. Had Mr. Jefferson lived to this time, he might have been foremost among the scientists whose investigations look to solving the problem of the oldest continent and the first human beings on the globe. Alright, so they're saying that I guess after Jefferson died, there were some discoveries that show that there's actually been habitation here for thousands of years, even possibly millions, as we're about to read. Correlating with this, the New Scientist also made some research on this. Basically the same. Says here, the father of all men is 340,000 years old by Colin Barris. Albert Perry, that was the person's name, carried a secret in his DNA, a Y chromosome so distinctive that it reveals new information about the origin of our species. It shows that the last common male ancestor down the paternal line of our species is over twice as old as we thought. Alright, twice as old, found in America. But he is the oldest, proven to be the oldest, carrying this Y chromosome, and he's in South Carolina. Continuing, it says, Perry, recently deceased, was an African American who lived in South Carolina. A few years ago, one of his female relatives submitted a sample of his DNA to a company called Family Tree DNA for genealogical analysis. Genetics can use such samples to work out how we are related to one another. Hundreds of thousands of people have now had their DNA tested. The data from these tests have shown that all men gained their Y chromosome from a common male ancestor. This genetic atom lived between 60,000 and 140,000 years ago. All men except Perry, that is. So stop right there. They're telling you, we thought all men descended from one common ancestor, right? 140,000 years ago, which they teach us was in Africa. But all men except Perry, right? That is, right? When family tree DNA technicians tried to place Perry on the Y chromosome family tree, they just couldn't. His Y chromosome was like no other so far analyzed. Deeper roots, it says here. Michael Hammer, a geneticist at the University of Arizona, Tucson, heard about Perry's unusual Y chromosome and did some further testing. His team research revealed something extraordinary. Perry did not descend from the genetic atom. In fact, his Y chromosome was so distinct that his male lineage probably separated from all others about 338,000 years ago. Alright? I mean, we gotta be careful when they say this genetic atom, because in their eyes, from what they've taught us all our lives, the genetic atom came out of Africa. But they don't really know if that was the atom. They're just calling it the first male or first person genetic atom. But the old world is on this side. I told you, the Hebrews are over here. So where does the genetic atom really start? And how far ago? As you can see, they traced it back to an indigenous, copper-colored, tribal person from this side of the world, America, not Africa. Let's continue. Others, judging from the similarity of those religious rites, have conjectured that it was peopled by the 10 tribes at the dispersion of Israel. Some think it received its population from China or Japan. Others that it was colonized by some wandering tribes of Japhet, who penetrated into the trackless regions of North America by the Straits of Asia. Some have been bold enough to assert that America was not inundated at the deluge, and that consequently the Aborigines were antediluvians and the most ancient people on earth, which last assertion is correct. So he's telling us, this author, is that this last idea is the correct one. And we just read, right, how the oldest Y chromosome was dated back to a man in South Carolina, a so-called African American, a copper-colored Aboriginal, indigenous person of America. And as it correlates here, it's the antediluvian people, the Aborigines, right? And this is the correct assertion. They didn't all perish or die when part of the land was sunk. Alright, you've been here. It says here that the Red Indians were the oldest inhabitants of America, known to white men. You know, dodge the hijack when they're talking about these colors, right? Red, they're talking about copper color, brown, dark brown, the so-called Negro, or what red are they really talking about, you know? So, though there were here doubtless older beings who antedated them by many centuries and had many traditions as to their origin, but none sufficiently divested of myth and absurdity to lead to a rational conclusion as to the first country inhabited by them or the beginning of its occupation. They had some vague traditions of a very long ago people who were inhabitants of this country before them, but nothing sufficiently definite for reliable information as to the character or the time of this people. Some tribes believed that their ancestors had sprung from the ground in this country, and that they and their descendants had never lived in any other land. So, sprout from the ground. In the Old Testament, how is Adam made? From the soil, right? From the ground. Alright, so others believed that their ancestors had come from a distant land, but they could give no intelligent account as to where that distant land might be or when they left it and came to this. The traditions of the wigwam throw no satisfactory light on the dark problem as to which of the continents was first inhabited by man. All information on this subject that is worth knowing has come from another source, and that source is not from the living of the present or of the unknown past. As we must look into the rock-built graveyards of buried fossilized animals to learn their history, so we must exhume the relics and skeletons of dead and forgotten human beings to learn where and how they began life on the earth and on this continent. So just to get an orientation and perspective of what they're talking about when they're saying quaternary period, where in the National Geographic website it says that the quaternary period began 2.6 million years ago and extends into the present. So it's still going on, but it goes all the way back to 2.6 million years ago. Alright? So again, we just read in the book that in Europe or in the Eastern Hemisphere, man can be traced all the way back to the Quaternary Age. Alright? Now it continues, it says, as early, however, as they indicate the presence of man in the Eastern Hemisphere, there have been findings of his relics and his bones in America, which show his presence here as early, if not earlier. Again, we're talking about as early as 2.6 million years ago or earlier than the Eastern Hemisphere, okay? Earlier than 2.6 million years ago. Evidences of man in America during the Quaternary Age, which some geologists estimate as 200,000 years ago, while others make the time much longer, have been found in the sands and gravels drifted by glacial currents and in localities with surrounding possibly indicating the Tertiary Age. The Tertiary Age, so even older. So again, for a clear perspective and orientation of what they're saying here, now in the Britannica.com website, right, Encyclopedia Britannica, it says here the Tertiary period is an interval of geologic time lasting from approximately 66 million to 2.6 million years ago. It is the traditional name for the first of the two periods in the Cenozoic era, 66 million years ago to the present. The second is the Quaternary period, 2.6 million years ago to the present. So, alright, we're talking about that these findings could go as far back as at least 2.6 million years ago up to 66 million years ago. So how do they know where? That's what he's saying earlier. How do they know where to put it and what exact year? So is it 2.6 million years ago or 50 million years ago? You know what I mean? After, like he said earlier, 400,000 years, 400 million years, to us is all the same. we just say, hey, wow, that sounds like a long time ago. But when we start looking at history, right, and how they teach us, right, chronology and the evolution of man, the Darwinism, you can see Louis Agassiz, right? He didn't go for that. He didn't go for that. That's why he became controversial, all right? So again, they found evidence of man in America during the Quaternary Age, again, but even possibly indicating the Tertiary Age. We just read, we have a clear perspective now and orientation. We're talking about a long time ago. In America, right? Evidence. Continues, says, in the glacial drift on a bluff in the valley of the Delaware River near Trenton, New Jersey, have been found rudely chipped argillite implements, which scientists have pronounced Paleolithic. They were found embedded in the sands and gravel, which clearly indicated that they had reposed undisturbed ever since they had been deposited there by the glacial flood, which deposited the sands and the pebbles around them. The hard stone of which they had been made could not have been worn or chipped into the shape they bore by any force except that of the hand of man, and hence it is inferred that man was there when the current of the melting ice of the early glacial period bore them there. This would take man back thousands of years beyond the Quaternary Age to his possible existence in America in the Tertiary Age. Again, Tertiary Age, we just read in Encyclopedia Britannica, it's from 2.6 million years ago to 66 million years ago. Where then? This evidence they found, what year was it? All right, even if it was 2.6 million years ago, you know, the least, that's old, but it could go even more back than that. So imagine, what are we talking about here? We're talking about a false chronology, and we're also talking about that because of the false dating they use, the carbon dating, the science they use, which has been proven to have flaws by other scholars, you know. That's why we get these crazy numbers and this out of place archaeology and scientific findings, because of the false history we are taught. It makes sense because we've been told a lie. All right. African Americans' Y chromosome sparks shift in evolutionary timetable by Alan Boyle, science director editor at NBC News. So it says here, scientists say an African American male's odd genetic signature suggests that the human Y chromosome's lineage goes back further in time than they thought. The study focuses on the analysis of a DNA sample that was obtained from an African American living in South Carolina and submitted to the Genographic Project, a National Geographic effort aimed at mapping human origins and migration. The funny thing about this sample is that it didn't match up with any of the previously known genetic signatures for the Y chromosome, which is passed down from father to son. Alright, so do you understand what they're saying? It's saying that his DNA doesn't match what they have in their records, in their Y chromosome database. Alright, his is unique. This African, so-called African American living in South Carolina, America. Continues, says, nobody expected to find anything like this, Hammer said in a news release. A team led by Fernando Mendez, a researcher in Hammer's lab, analyzed more than 240,000 DNA base pairs on the African American's Y chromosome. A comparison of the differences between the mystery genetic signature and previously known signatures led the team to conclude that the most recent common ancestor for the entire group lived about 338,000 years ago. Okay, according to them. That goes further back than fossil records goes for anatomically modern humans, Hammer said. Alright, you're hearing that, right? The fossils records speak to 195,000 years or 200,000 years, he said. It also goes further back than previous date for the most recent common ancestor based on Y chromosome analysis, which is in the range of 142,000 years. So, how significant is that? Because this is what they teach us, right? That first humans, the first anatomically modern humans, and the oldest ancestor with the Y chromosome, you know, is in Africa. That's what they've been teaching us all our life. But this new research, this new analysis of this DNA from this man in South Carolina, this Aboriginal man, right? Copper-colored tribe found here, goes back even further, right? And he's in America, right? This is the true old world. Continuing this book, it says, in the auriferous gravels of an old riverbed in Calaveras County, California, was found at the bottom of a mining shaft, 150 feet below the surface, the skull of a human being. Over it had been deposited 4 successive beds of gold-bearing drift and 5 streams of lava from volcanoes long since extinct. The gold-bearing gravels in which it was found belonged to the Tertiary Age, and man is therefore assumed to have been in California during that age. Again, they found a human skull deep down in deposits that are supposed to be from the Tertiary Age, is what they're telling us. Alright? And I read this actually in the hidden history of the human race. It's a great book, and there's so many findings there. There's also other books, Forbidden History, Forbidden Archaeology, and these are great books. All the out-of-place objects, skulls, skeletons, animals they found in deposits that they're telling us are, millions of years old, and they're not supposed to be there. Many other instances of the relics of man found in the glacial drift might be cited, but the above 3 are enough to show that he was in America as early as he was in the Eastern Hemisphere, and perhaps earlier, and that America did not need immigrants from the East or from any other terrestrial source to begin her population, because we had our own indigenous aboriginals to this land of the soil, from the soil, created from Hawa, right? Created by Hawa, the framer, the shaper. Again, America possibly had citizens to spare while the Eastern Hemisphere was void of inhabitants. Again, America possibly had citizens to spare while the Eastern Hemisphere was void of inhabitants. Besides the 3 cases before cited, which carried the inhabitants of America back beyond the Quaternary and into the Tertiary Age, there are examples of man's very early appearance upon the American continent, in which the time is sometimes given in years. In the Mammoth Cave of Kentucky, a mummy was to be seen early in the last century, about the age of which no reliable conjecture was formed, from the fact that it was said to have been removed from an adjacent cave without nothing with sufficient particularity the original position it occupied. As it appeared in the Mammoth Cave, it was sitting in an excavation about 4 feet square and 3 feet deep. Now they're talking about a mummy, right? They found in Kentucky in a Mammoth Cave. So the skeleton, that of a female, was perfectly preserved, with the flesh and skin dried upon it. It was clad first in the skin of a deer, and over this was a mantle made of the inner bark of the linden tree. The hair was cut short and was of a dark red color. The woman was above the average size and was neither black nor red, but of a light complexion. By her side was a large reticule or sack made of the inner bark of the linden tree. In this ample portmanteau were the following articles: 1 cap of woven or knit bark, 7 headdresses made of the quills of birds, so put together that when placed upon the head, the quilled ends would bind the head, while the feathered ends would expand like an umbrella and make a showy headdress. Hundreds of seeds of a dark color, strung together like beads, a number of the red hoofs of the fawn, strung together into a necklace, the claw of an eagle with a string through it so it could be worn as a pendant, the jaw of a bear, seemingly designed to be worn also as a pendant, the skins of the 2 rattlesnakes, with 14 rattles still upon one of them, and a quantity of coloring matter done up in leaves, a small bunch of threads or strings made of the sinews of the deer, a number of needles made of bone, and 2 whistles of cane. How long she was an occupant of the cave, we have no means of determining, or even of rationally estimating. But if the cave was million years old, as stated by Professor Shaler, she might be allowed a few dozen of these years for her enjoyment of the darkness and solitude of her subterranean abode. So they're saying they found a mummy here in Kentucky that's at least 2 million years old. All right. Also, did you know that the oldest mummies were actually in Chile and Peru and not in Egypt? Since the early 1900s, almost 300 human mummies have been uncovered along the coast of southern Peru and northern Chile, including adults, children, infants, and miscarried fetuses. With some dated to as far back as 50 BC, there are the oldest mummies discovered in the world today. Alright, you hear that? Not in Egypt. They were made by a group of hunter-gatherers known as the Chinchorro people, who were mummifying their dead roughly 2,000 years before the ancient Egyptians began mummifying their pharaohs. The dates that we have for the bodies are from 7,000 years ago. So they have more relative antiquity in terms of international work on the human body than that found in Egypt, says Medina Para. Alright? And in Wikipedia we read, the Chinchorro mummies. The Chinchorro mummies are mummified remains of individuals from the South American Chinchorro culture, found in what is now northern Chile. They are the oldest examples of artificially mummified human remains, having been buried up to 2,000 years before the Egyptian mummies. While the earliest mummy that has been found in Egypt dated around 3000 BC, the oldest anthropogenically modified Chinchorro mummy dates from around 5050 BC. The oldest naturally mummified mummy recovered from the Atacama Desert is dated around 7020 BC. You're hearing that? That's almost 9 to 10,000 years ago, people, right? So where is the true old world? Shell midden and bone chemistry suggest that 90% of the people's diet was seafood. Many ancient cultures of fisher folk existed, tucked away in the arid river valleys of the Andes. But the Chinchorro made themselves unique by their dedicated preservation of the dead. Alright, so where is the true old world? While excavating for the gasworks in New Orleans, a human skeleton was found in the delta of the Mississippi below 4 successive forests and pronounced by Dr. Fowler to have been there 15,000 years. That mysterious people who antedated the Red Indian and covered the Mississippi Valley with mounds, circumvallations, temples, and fortifications, and scattered everywhere stone axes, flint arrowheads, pottery, pipes, and ornaments of copper and clay may have been the autochthones of America. Some of their mounds, and especially those immense piles at Cahokia and Grave Creek, remind us of the mass heaped over the body of Aliatis near Sardis. But unlike that monarch's mound, believed to have existed 2,500 years, they furnish no key to the time at which they were reared. Trees have been found growing upon some of them, whose annulations show them to be 800 years old, but this determined nothing as to the real age of the mounds. The trees that measured 800 years may have been preceded by others, and those again by others of equal or greater age, and so on, until thousands of years were exhausted in the interminute calculation. Some of these trees may have antedated the giant redwoods of California, or the fossil forests of Yellowstone Park, but we have nothing to guide us in arriving at a just conclusion as to their age. In the midst of these perplexities, we can have no reason to doubt that the power which is said to have created man in Asia might have created him elsewhere and placed him in habitable quarters in America before any part of the Eastern Hemisphere was ready for his occupancy. Alright, so they're talking about Hawa, that power which is said to have created man, right? Hawa, right? Put in America, right? People, before any part of the Eastern Hemisphere was ready for his occupancy. We're talking about the other side. So before they were ready to have people based on the land and how it was forming, America already had a habitable quarters, it says, right? Habitable quarters, a paradise, a terrestrial paradise, a Garden of Eden. The first formed rocks, which have yet been seen upon the globe, and the earliest forms of life yet discovered, and the oldest human relics, which have yet been found, were in America. Again, the first formed rocks which have yet been seen upon the globe, in America. The earliest forms of life yet discovered, in America. The oldest human relics which have yet been found were in America. If therefore man first lived and died and laid down his bones in the Western world before he died and laid them down in the Eastern Hemisphere, why should we look for his origin in the East instead of the West? If there's so much evidence, correlation, history, scientific research, evidence proving that this is the true old world, why do we continue to look for the origins of man in the East instead of the West? Why not claim him where we first find his remains, instead of troubling ourselves about the time of his coming and the place when he came? They don't know anything. They're so confused they found people over here. They're wasting so much time troubling themselves about his coming, about how you got here and where you came from, that they ain't looking at the foundational truth that you've been here. You are ancient autochthones of America. The Orientals have not been able in thousands of years to fix the latitude and longitude of the Garden of Eden, where the human race is claimed to have first begun existence. And as the question is still open, the Occidentals may reasonably claim America as the first land above the ocean and the first inhabited by man, until the proof is made clear of an earlier inhabited continent. Until they can prove, please prove it, prove we are wrong, prove this is the old world. Until then, America is the first land above the ocean and the first inhabited by man. If America was the firstborn and first inhabited of the continent, she is entitled to the place of honor in the construction and the peopling of the globe. In the construction and the peopling of the globe, Dodge the hijack, the plane, the four corners. Other continents like the American may have had contemporaneous foundations laid down in the ancient seas that enveloped the infant world. America, however, was the first built up and the first to show dry land above the universal ocean. There is deeply implanted in our nature a love of the distant past, and the nearer it approaches the confines of the dark unknown, the more we are enamored of it. We like old things, and the older they are, the better we like them. Americans should be proud to claim theirs as the first of the continent. Again, you, copper-colored Aboriginal of America, you should be proud to claim your land as the first of the continent to rise above the waves of the universal ocean, and the first to furnish an abiding place for the human race. The Garden of Eden, the Gardens of Hesperides, right? This is it right here, the terrestrial paradise, right here. A place abiding for the human race. This may be likened by some to those genealogical enthusiasts who would trace their descent from Adam, but such extravagance can hardly eradicate the sentiment. They are proud to look back to the humble beginnings of barbarian man upon this continent and to follow his progress through incalculable ages to the splendors of the present and the possibilities of the future. America, long deprived of the honor of her proper place among the continents by being called the New World, has at last been pronounced by geologists the first to exist, and the analogical inference is reasonable that she was the first to be inhabited. Americans expect of scientists that they will continue to study the rock-leaved volumes of the world and to search among the undestroyed remains of primeval man until it is clearly determined that as America is the oldest of the continents, she was also the first to be inhabited by man. Alright? So again, 1800s, we have a renowned scholar, geologist, letting us know that America is the first land out of the primordial waters. And this paper, this author we're reading from, he's letting us know that finally somebody, right, made an analogical inference, pronounced that America is the first to exist, the first to be inhabited by man. Well, I hope you like these two chapters that I read from this book. Again, we read from tradition.
right, everybody. We're back, and I hope y'all got something out of the first part of what we played for you, and I hope you wrote down the names, the books, and stuff, so you can go. Actually, to be honest with you, what we just ran at the top of the broadcast, you don't have to go out to a store and buy it. All you got to do is just type into Google Louis Agassiz. Louis Agassiz, right there. His biography is there. The book you read about the beginning of life and stuff on the planet, where it came from, all right there for you to see it for yourself. He was attacked. There's no doubt about it. You can read about the attack and all that, because he was unleashing something that was not supposed to be told. But he told it anyway, and they done the best they could to shut him down and close him off and seal it up, because if you keep on saying this kind of stuff, we cannot control the world, because he has a bad habit of telling the truth. Y'all hold on a minute.
Remember to pay yourself first. The greatest focal point in your life is when preparedness and opportunity meet. Mortgages, foreclosures, property taxes can be a thing of the past. It's all up to you to be in honor. We have public and we have private. When it comes to mortgages and foreclosures, the banks don't have no skin in the game. And property taxes are outright illegal. But if you don't know no better, you just keep drinking the Kool-Aid. Cut it out, y'all. Go to TarhakaDebtElimination.org. That's TarhakaDebtElimination.org. Now is the time to get out of debt. The opportunity is here. This is your greatest focal point. Let's shut this thing down, man. Get out of debt now.
Since the late 1630s, the people of color in America have been struggling with the actual account of their true identities. After being labeled a race of people under certain classifications based upon skin hue, the complexity of learning their background, heritage, and culture was relied upon the Western European settlers that won the hundreds of war invasions that took place immediately in the year 1492 and beyond. The inability of governments of America and Europe to come to grips with their dark past and allow the Aborigines, who are natives to the land of America, as well as the descendants of everyone else involved, the healing required to move forward is not only a denial of basic human rights, but a telltale sign of the type of current racism, economic neglect, and mistreatment that will surely come to light during this generation of life. The threads of these ancient cultures of the Aborigine people, having existed here for tens of thousands of years prior to the arrival of the Europeans, must be preserved, strengthened, and woven back into a quilt that tells the unique story of not only their past, but of their bright future as well. The reasons for this runs much deeper than one may assume. One reason being, we have thousands of ancient history records, artifacts, tombstones, and hieroglyphics, etc., all in Africa. But to really put the full puzzle together, one must learn the facts of the actual accounts of the Aborigines of America, because they are the direct ancestors of the now called African Americans. In today's America, we are witnessing the now called Native Americans battle against the federal government over the Dakota pipeline. They are protesting because of the government's approval of this pipeline forces the removal of hundreds of their ancestors' respectful and sacred cemeteries from the land. But actions like this are not uncommon by the federal government. In fact, the immigration of native Indians of this land started in 1492, and one untold example of that took place in the year of 1838. At that time, the federal government began forced removal of any Cherokee Indian and or Creek Indian families who had neither applied for state citizenship nor moved to their newly established Indian territory in the state of Oklahoma on their own. Crude stockades were constructed to temporarily contain captured Creek and Cherokee families until they could be quickly relocated outside of the state of Georgia. One of those stockades was on the Etowah River, near Canton in Cherokee County, Georgia. Nearly all Cherokee family cemeteries have been removed by late 1839 except for a couple, due to the fact that there were very few Cherokees in Cobb County, Georgia that actually went on the Trail of Tears. A large cemetery of Indian slaves, or rather Aborigine people of America, located in Marietta, Georgia, that dates from approximately 1812 to the 1880s, has not been removed, and it's very essential to the history of the Aborigines. I personally asked a few of my good military friends to ask any ranking soldier, preferably someone of Aborigine descent, to go to this location for me and record what it actually looks like, due to the fact that it's gated up and it's off limits to the public for obvious reasons.
So some of the people that's been working here for a while, they informed me, like, this morning, that there was an actual cemetery on base where slaves were buried. And I'm like, what? Like, seriously, if there's a cemetery where slaves were buried that we could go and visit? So I was like, you gotta take me. You have to take me. So I'm out here right now, y'all, and I kind of want you guys to go, like, on a journey with me. I'm going into the actual gate right now. Let me see if I can turn this around. So I'm going into the actual gate. They have it gated off right now. From what I heard, they've been trying to clear it and find more grave sites, but they need help in clearing it. You see, it's all, like, covered in debris and just not manicured or anything like that right now. But they said where the red flags are, if you guys can see the red flags, that's where the actual people are buried that don't have tombstones. But some of these, y'all, look at this. This is crazy, y'all. Some of these really have tombstones. I'm going to show you guys right now. This is crazy. So this is the first one, guys. I think the name is Annie Robinson, and she was born in 1823, died December 17, 1892. This is like such an amazing, you know, anybody that knows me knows I'm like extremely happy right now, because this is rare. Like, this is a part of our history, our culture, and, you know, we have to learn about this stuff. We have to know about this stuff. We have to know where we came from. This one right here, this person was born April 20th, 1891. I can't make out the name. Last name is definitely Moore, though. I can make that out. It looks as if it's two people, somebody and Rosa Moore. So I'm not sure if I can go a little further back for you guys. Like, I'm actually standing on the ground in the cemetery, walking around. Look at this one back here. Just making his own video. This is, like, absolutely amazing. Did you find anything else? Is it? I'm on my way. Oh, gosh. Y'all should see what I'm walking through right now. Like, this is crazy. Oh, gosh. Oh. Y'all, if I fall, oh, shoot. Please don't laugh at me if I fall, y'all. But, you alright? What'd you find? Uh-huh. Oh, great. So, look, all these red flags, y'all, are where people were actually, where our ancestors are actually buried. So this tombstone right here is kind of leaning a little bit. Let me see if I can push it. Oh, Lord. Push it up so you guys can. Rebecca Bedford. And she was born May 11th, 1868 and died December 20th, 1908. And it just has our mother on that one. And it's a few more, you know, back here. But this whole area, you guys, I don't know if you can see, like, one of my co-workers back there. He said the graves go as far as back as he is right now. And oh my God, I'm just overly excited right now. I really need to calm this thing down. And we really need to get this cleaned up. I mean, I don't know who owns our installation. That's probably something I need to find out. Or I heard that there was a team that come out here and they're trying to put a team together to come help take care of this, because this is something that should be cherished and cleaned up. And oh my God. So this lady, Miss Jackson, was born April 17, 1930. Let me just put that out there. That's one day before my birthday. Let me see what her say. Faithful until death.
This is no longer a secret. These are our ancestors. I'm just here to make you think.
All right, everybody, we're back. Now, what we're about to do now is take a little quick break, and when we come back, then we'll be going into the second phase of what we're talking about here this evening. And keep in mind, this is just part one. Now, the first people on the lands of the Americas, where did life begin on Earth? What was the first of the lands to rise? Who was here before Columbus? All that stuff right there. We're dealing with here on part one, and then we're going to come with part two. I feel like after we do part two, now keep in mind I'm going to put it together. After we do part two, there shall be a paradox in the minds of people, so we can get this thing right before we go on to something different. Well, anyway, in the meantime, y'all just hold on a minute. I will be right back.
Another
everybody. We back. Now, we're going to go into the second phase of our broadcast here tonight. But this time, here is a man and his mama sitting down side by side, trying to drop a little information. And I thought it was quite interesting, and I would like to share it with you. So this is what we're going to do. Y'all hold on a minute, and we'll be right back. Just listen now.
Greetings and welcome to another episode of An American Deception. I'm your host, Tavis Sanders, also known as Red Tail Hawk. I'd like to welcome our co-host, Renee Sanders, also known as Red Tail Fox.
Greetings, everyone.
And so, let's just jump right into it and, get the audience caught up for why we want to talk about this subject today. And so, a little while ago, I was reading an article in Ebony magazine back in 2012. And the title of the article was 5 Things to Know About Blacks and Natives. And as I was reading the article, I really started to notice a pattern about the misconceptions that a lot of people have. And really was a little bit upset because so many people possibly had the opportunity to read this article, and it really scared people away from identifying themselves with the Native ancestry that they may have as being Black Americans. And so it's something that I wanted to bring and talk about with the group. And so, we figured let's take a swing at it and see what we can get.
All right, let's go.
Yeah, and so, we got my mother with us, so, it's going to be really interesting. Okay, so let's just jump right into it. Again, the title was 5 Things to Know About Blacks and Natives. It was an article written in 2012 in a November edition of Ebony magazine. And that, so that if you were interested to look it up and read it for yourself, you could take a look at it. But we're going to go over it, and I think we're going to read some of the points, and then we'll go back and talk about the points.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah?
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So did you want to read the first point?
All right, I'll read the first one. Number 1 was how we first hooked up.
Okay.
It says, the earliest recorded African and Native American contact occurred in April of 1502. When the first enslaved Africans were taken to Hispaniola. Some Africans escaped to Santo Domingo. The first Black Native Americans emerged from these groups.
Okay. Wow. Okay. In that point, it stated that the first Black Native Americans emerged from these groups. But we know that that's not necessarily the case, because the indigenous populations all throughout the southeastern United States and even on the islands and parts of South America were of a Negroid stock. And explorers were already stating these facts before, as they were coming here. And so any African that were brought over here didn't necessarily make the people Black. They were already so-called Black.
Yes, they were of a Negroid stock already. They were already of a dark complexion. As a matter of fact, I have a statement here that says in 1524, the Carolina Coast people were said to be of a dark color, not much unlike the Ethiopians. And in that reference, I must say that Ethiopians is not necessarily referring to the people of Ethiopia, but at that time, the continent of Africa was called Ethiopia. Okay. And so that's what they were referring to, that they were of a dark color like the people that were over in Africa.
Africa, the continent itself,
yes.
Not necessarily one country in Africa.
Yes, correct.
Okay.
Correct, yes.
Now that's interesting. And so basically what these explorers were stating was that these people were of a Negroid color.
That's right, yes.
And so for that statement to say that Black Native Americans came about from the African being introduced into a slave population in 1502 would have been told
false.
It's false.
It's false.
Okay,
yes.
all right. I know we had another statement, reference
Yes.
from 1550, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, this one is from 1550, and this statement is addressing the people that they were being called Negroes. So this one, it says that a Spanish official wrote to the king, and again this was in 1550. And it says, in the island of Puerto Rico there were above 15,000 Negroes and less than 500 Spaniards. And in all of Hispaniola there may be 2,000 Spaniards and there are over 30,000 Negroes. The same is the case in the island of Cuba and in Veracruz, Puerto de Caballos, which is in Honduras, and in Nombre de Dios, Cartagena, Santa Maria, and the coast of Venezuela, where there were 20 Negroes to one white man.
Wow. Okay, so basically what they're stating is that the population is a Negroid population, without a doubt.
Yeah, exactly, because at that point there was only a few hundred Africans that had been brought over to the Americas by that time. Maybe a low count, I'm not sure exactly what the count, but there was no way that all of these people could have been in African stock.
Okay, and just to remember, we're talking about the islands also. So, this is for later, but we're not speaking in reference to the United States as of yet. These numbers are the numbers that are on the islands. We haven't gotten to what they would consider mainland United States yet.
Well, this is the islands, and around the islands in Mexico, Venezuela, Honduras. So this is all in the Gulf area, which is where they were exploring.
Okay, but we haven't touched on Florida, South Carolina, Georgia, or any of these southern states yet.
No, not yet. No.
Okay, so let's go to point two.
But the first point that we did mention, they did mention about the Carolina Coast people
being of a dark complexion as well.
Right.
Okay,
yes.
and that was 1524.
Yes, correct.
Okay.
So that statement was before this statement was made.
Okay. All right. So let's skip to number 2, and then what does the article, the Ebony article, state as far as number 2 is concerned?
Okay. Well, number 2 was some Native American tribes held slaves.
Okay. And so and I know that unfortunately, or for different reasons, we did, as Native Americans, we would hold slaves, but not necessarily in the way that it would be perceived. I know some of them would be family, where we would allocate some of our brothers and sisters or some of our children as slaves in order to fall underneath different tax brackets in order to keep them safe or from being sold into other forms of slavery.
That's true, yes.
Yeah. So that as far as that's concerned, yes, natives held slaves, but so did everyone else at that time.
Yes, there were many free blacks who were also slave owners. And again, some of that was true also with them, is that they were holding family members and they wanted to keep families intact. But there were some that also just they could afford, they had slaves.
And I just also make a point that Native Americans were being used as slaves as well.
Oh,
and
yes,
so just because you were a slave, that didn't mean that you came from Africa. And as a matter of fact, later on, we'll see more than likely they were of a Native American stock rather than African, as far as being on the mainland United States.
Yes, that's true. Yes.
Okay, so number 2 was basically, that's correct. Natives did hold slaves.
Oh, yes, they did. Yes,
Okay.
they did.
And so let's go to number 3.
Okay, number 3. You do not have Indian up in your family.
Okay.
I find that very interesting. I want to read a little bit more of that statement, though, because it goes on to say, as Harvard University historian Louis Agassiz Jr. wrote in 2009, only 5% of all black Americans have at least 12.5% Native American ancestry, the equivalent of at least one great-grandparent. So he's saying that only 5% of black Americans have Native in their family.
Okay. Where would he get that number from? Do you know?
That I have no idea. We need to ask him.
Okay. Okay. So, but let's look at some real numbers.
Well, before we look at numbers, let's look at a statement.
Okay.
I have a statement that is from the 19th annual report from the Bureau of American Ethnology. This is 1897 to 1898. This is a publication that comes out from the Smithsonian Institute. And the statement reads as, the Indians associated and intermarried with the Negroes until they finally lost their identity and were classed with that race, so that a considerable portion of the blood of the Southern Negroes is unquestionably Indian.
Wow. You know, that's a very profound statement. Now, you said this came from the Smithsonian Institute?
Yes, that's correct, yes.
The 19th annual report. Okay, and this was in
1897.
1897. Okay, so now let's look at this point for a few minutes and go back to the statement. Because, you know, it states that in the statement that Mr. Gates says that, what is it about? 5% of black Americans have Native in their blood. And here we have have the state, you know, the
from the Smithsonian Institute.
Right, and they did this for the state so that they could give a appropriate proportion of, you know, what was really going on culturally here in the United States.
That's correct. Yes.
And in that statement it says, well, first it says that the Indians associated and intermarried with the Negro. Now, again, Negro is a term that they use to classify the indigenous population since the time of their arrival.
That's correct.
And so what Negroes are we talking about here?
Exactly. We don't know which Negro they're talking about, and especially during slavery, that the Indians and the blacks, they were all grouped together
and classified as Negroes. Okay, and then so that's when the numbers really begin to be of importance. But before we get to the numbers, let's finish this statement. And it says, until they finally lost their identity and was classed with that race. What race was that? The Indians are now being classed with the Negroes.
Yes.
However, the Indians were always called Negro. And so now we have an identity reversal, almost, where you're going to classify a Negro as having to be from Africa. And so there we go, stripping away the racial identity of the black population.
And their ethnic identity.
And then it says, so that a considerable portion. And I don't think considerable portion is 12.5%.
Correct.
I don't think so. I think considerable portion would be more than 50%, not necessarily 12.5. And so, you know, it's a lot more that we need to go into. But before we do, you know, let's take a small break, and we're going to make sure that we get right back to this point so that we can give the viewing audience some more factual information.
Okay.
All right, thanks. We'll be right back with more of An American Deception.
Thank you, prayer. We return thanks to our mother, the earth, which sustains us. We return thanks to the rivers and streams which supply us with water. We return thanks to all herbs which furnish medicine for the cure of our diseases. We return thanks to the moon and stars which give us their light when the sun is unseen. We return thanks to the sun that has looked upon the earth with a generous eye. Lastly, we return thanks to the Great Spirit who symbolizes all goodness and who directs all things for the good of his children.
Greetings and welcome back to An American Deception. Before the break, we were going over a quote from the 19th annual report of the Bureau of American Ethnology, and where it stated that a considerable portion of the blood of the Southern Negro was unquestionably Indian, and how that went against the words used by Harvard professor Henry Louis Gates Jr. where he wrote in a 2009 piece that only 5% of all black Americans have at least 12.5% Native American ancestry. And so, let's go back to here, where it's actually a report issued by the government that is saying that most blacks, have a considerable portion of Indian blood in their bloodline.
The Southern blacks.
The Southern blacks, and now Henry Gates, is saying that that is not the case. I don't understand where he's getting these numbers from, but we're going to talk about numbers in a minute. But let's go over this quote for a little bit longer, because not only do you have this quote that states that the Southern Negro is basically Indian, we have other quotes that basically is leaning towards the same thing. And I know that a lot of other issues was going on with regards to slavery and how they were intermingling the two cultures in order to create this new idea or this new, hybrid man that they were to control.
And we have to remember also that they were trying to create a white-black society, free slave society. And so a way that they would be able to do that is by mixing these dark-skinned Native Americans in with the Africans and then calling them all Negroes. Mm-hmm. Negroes became equivalent to slave. Mm-hmm. Or really, actuality, slave became equivalent to Negro.
Correct. Because the Negro, we were being called Negro from the time of their arrival.
Yes.
And so that Negro became synonymous with being a slave. Where if you were a Negro, then by law, then you had to be a slave. Mm-hmm. And by law, if you were a slave, then you had to be from Africa, and thereby stripping our native or our indigenous roots away from us legally.
Yes.
Yes. Now I have a quote here. We were talking about slaves and the intermingling of the two cultures and percentages and numbers, since people want to talk about blood quantum and you don't really have native in your blood. So let's go over the quote.
Okay, well, one of them is addressing the intermingling of the people. And this one is coming from Slavery in the Cherokee Nation by Patrick Mingus, that is stating that during the transitional period from 1650 to 1750, Africans and Native Americans shared the common experience of enslavement. This sharing of lives often led to marriage. The intermarriage of Africans and Native Americans was facilitated by the disproportionate number of African male slaves to female, which was, here it says 2 to 1, but it was actually more than that. Mm-hmm. And the decimation of Native American males by disease, enslavement, and prolonged war against the colonists.
Okay, and so basically what they're saying is that they were removing the Native American men and introducing the African men into the population in order to breed a black and white society, where you would have either you were black or you were white, and they were really trying to get rid of the native population altogether.
Right, and again, when you had this intermingling with the children, because they were in slavery at the time, and this is when slavery was a lifetime sentence, and it also went from the mother, so whatever the mother was, that's what the children were. So if the mother was a slave, then that made the children slave and made the children slaves for life also.
I know they had some laws that were being introduced at those times too.
Yes.
Do you want to go over any of them?
Well, we did have
Well, okay, so before we went over the law, did you want to go over the numbers?
Yes. Yes.
All right, so, okay, well then you can go ahead and start the numbers, and I can pick up from where you are.
Okay, well, really these numbers are talking about the men, the slaves that were brought over from Africa to the Americas, not just the United States, but to the entire Americas. But the percentage of the male, it has here, was 64.5%, and this information is coming from slavevoyages.org. Okay. So 64.5% of the people that were shipped from Africa were male, and 22.3% were children. So that left only 14% of the people that were shipped over here, only 14% of them were female.
Okay, and so now, so it was a disproportionate amount of men being shipped into, being put into slavery, as far as the African is concerned.
Yes.
And again, also with the Native American men, they were disproportionately being shipped out or being put into slavery and being removed off of the mainland in order to bring in the African male to the slave, and to the population.
Yes, another story that is really not told is, and that is the large numbers of the native males that were shipped out of the country. Most of them went down to the islands, and as a matter of fact, some of them, when they were brought or introduced back into the States, they were introduced as Negroes, and not really as being native from the country. They were returning them right back to where they came from.
Okay, and also, you know, I just wanted to make a point. 12 million slaves were shipped from Africa into the Americas. However, roughly 300, maybe 400,000 landed in the United States.
Only 5% of the entire African slave trade ended up in the United States.
And so only 5% of the African slave trade ended in the United States.
Yes.
And wow, we'll talk about that at another time.
Yes.
But that number again is only around 250 to 350,000 slaves being shipped directly from Africa into the United States.
Yes. Yes.
All right. And then again, a disproportionate amount of African males being shipped, and not the female.
Not the females.
Right. And so the African male, in order to procreate, would have to intermarry and integrate into the Native American population.
And they say that is what made the numbers so large here in the United States, is that the slavery and the population was so stable that it was able to reproduce itself. Well, it was able to reproduce itself because they were using the native females who were already here, so they did not have to acclimate to anything.
Okay.
They were used to this here, you know, so,
okay.
yes, so they were able to reproduce, and some of them were having 10 children. But again, they were able to do that because they didn't travel anywhere. They were already here.
And I guess this is where we can get into the laws that were being created in order to reclassify what a Native American was.
Yes, and there were, by the 1800s, there were many states that were coming out with what they were calling black laws.
Okay.
And one of these black laws, which is really one of the more infamous ones, and really this one is coming from Virginia, but we find that these black laws, they really transferred from state to state to state. What one state did, another state usually picked up and did the same thing. And this one, it says in 1866, after the Civil War, that every person having 1/4 or more Negro blood shall be deemed a colored person, and every person not a colored person having 1/4 or more Indian blood shall be deemed Indian.
Okay, now what does that do? Now, you know, okay, hold on, let's go back. If you have 1/4 or more Negro blood, then you should be called a colored person.
Now again, we don't know what the Negro is.
Right, because a Negro could have been an indigenous individual.
Correct, yes.
And so really here it goes again, where they're really trying to create this white black America, and really trying to remove the Indian away from the, you know, now being called colored people. You know, and so if you were dark skinned, and then you weren't able to be classified as an Indian. And so now what about the not colored person being classified as an Indian? If you had 3 grandparents from Ireland and one of your grandfather was Native American, now you can be called Native American.
That's correct, but if it's the other way around.
If 3 colored individuals were from the indigenous area, and they have 1 African, then now that person is African and they can no longer be Native.
That's correct, yes.
And so, and just that law alone would have stripped away the identity to a large majority of the population.
Many.
Mm-hmm.
Many.
And to get back, now again, this law is from 1866. And to get back to the 19th annual report, which was from 1889? 1897. So they knew even 30 years later that these laws that they were creating was removing the native identity from these dark-skinned individuals.
And really what happened is even after that, they started coming up with more laws that it went from 1/4 to 1/8, and then it eventually went to 1/16, and then it went to 1 drop.
Okay, hold on, 1/16. So a person could have 15 grandparents, great-grandparents from America, 1 parent from Africa, and they would be considered African. They could not be classified as a Native American.
That's correct, yes.
But then on the same term, it could be 15 British and 1 Native American, and now that person can be classified as Native American.
Yes.
All right. Well, we have to wrap it up from there.
Okay, but we do need to just touch on this one last topic.
And what's that?
And that was the books that they suggested. Okay, and their number 5 was the definitive book, Black Indians by William Loring Cass.
Okay.
And that was what they felt was a definitive book. However, we feel that there are more books out there that have much more information where you could get more factual information.
All right, and there I could lead them, if you're interested in more information on this or other programs, or if you'd like to know more information about this particular topic today, please visit our website, or you can email us at anamericandeception@gmail.com. We'd like to thank you again.
All right, everybody, we're back. Now, this is a young man and his mother sit down together right there on the table with the books open and stuff, and delivered a little bit of information that you should consider checking out. In my personal opinion, and I know that I told you all that I was going to open up the books and stuff and read it to you for myself, but I couldn't do it. I wanted to do it, but I couldn't do it because I have too many things going on, and I am in Florida. We have just experienced 2 monsoons, hurricanes, tornadoes, and all this stuff is chopping it up. But I did have a small window to come on here and bring a little bit more stuff for you to check out. However, let's go. Now, what about the ancient Egyptians in the Americas? I'm going to deal with this right here because we can roll with this here. And keep in mind, this is just part 1. We'll get to part
1909. Explorer G.E. Kincaid embarked on a daring adventure down the Colorado River and through the Grand Canyon. Kincaid's motivation stemmed from a desire to explore the area's abundant mineral resources, such as gold, silver, and copper, before it would be permanently closed off. President Teddy Roosevelt sought to declare the Grand Canyon off-limits to timber and mining operations in 1908. While exploring the canyon, around 40 miles upstream from the El Tovar Crystal Canyon, Kincaid noticed intriguing stains in the sediment formation approximately 2,000 feet above him. Anchoring his boat, he disembarked to investigate. Although there was no discernible trail, Kincaid embarked on a short hike and stumbled upon a fascinating sight concealed beneath desert brush. A series of sandstone steps intricately carved into the side of the canyon, leading to a high shelf. Intrigued, Kincaid ascended the steps until he reached a man-made cavern entrance. Equipped with his flashlight, Kincaid ventured into the cavern, illuminating walls adorned with writing. However, to his surprise, the inscriptions were not in English or any Native American language, but rather ancient Egyptian hieroglyphics. As he peered into the distance, Kincaid realized that the tunnel extended far beyond what he initially comprehended. Little did he know that his astonishing discovery would ultimately result in his disappearance, as if he had vanished without a trace and would never be heard from again. The Grand Canyon, renowned for its breathtaking beauty and enigmatic allure, captivates observers with its seemingly infinite depths and awe-inspiring vastness. For countless centuries, this remarkable natural wonder has held profound significance as a sacred site among Native American tribes, serving as a spiritual beacon and a testament to their rich cultural heritage. 11 distinct indigenous groups, including the Havasupai, Hopi, Paiute, Navajo, and Zuni people, have long resided in or explored the Grand Canyon region, considering it not merely a stunning national park, but an integral part of their creation narratives and religious beliefs. The Havasupai, who have gracefully coexisted with the canyon for generations, perceive it as a gateway to both paradise and damnation, shaping their unique interpretation of heaven and hell. According to Havasupai belief, the souls of the departed traverse the canyon to reach their ultimate destination. Consequently, the Grand Canyon holds deep spiritual significance, serving as a meeting point of past and present, where the physical realm intertwines with the metaphysical. The geological features and awe-inspiring vistas of the canyon are not merely a spectacle for these tribes, but an inseparable part of their beliefs, traditions, and cultural identity. This marvel of nature, however, did not materialize overnight. It is the remarkable outcome of millions of years of erosion and geological activity. According to Hopi mythology, this majestic canyon was the birthplace of the first humans who were once lizard people. These reptilian shapeshifters emerged from the Grand Canyon and evolved into humans. If they were going to start their journey somewhere, it had to be in a place as remarkable as this, don't you think? When Kincaid realized that the tunnel was deeper than what he initially expected, he cautiously advanced further into the dimness of the surroundings. Methodically, he recorded detailed observations of everything he encountered. The primary passageway, approximately 12 feet wide, gradually narrowed to 9 feet as he ventured deeper. Around 57 feet from the entrance, the first side passages appeared, branching off to the right and left. Along these passages, numerous rooms of varying sizes, akin to contemporary living rooms, were discovered. Some measured as large as 30 by 40 feet square. Access to these rooms was granted through oval-shaped doors, and round air spaces within the walls facilitated ventilation. The passages were skillfully chiseled or hewn in straight lines, indicative of a deliberate engineering layout. It dawned on G.E. Kincaid that he had stumbled upon an immense complex. He estimated that this underground city could have accommodated as many as 50,000 inhabitants. Exploring further, he encountered granaries stocked with shelves of glazed pottery, some of which still contained seeds. Cooking areas and a vast dining hall were also discovered, while ancient artifacts filled the rooms. Kincaid meticulously wrapped a few small metal and ceramic objects to examine later. In one particularly spacious chamber, he identified it as a metalworking area, a technological feat seemingly incongruous with the region. Here we found tools of all descriptions, made of copper. These people undoubtedly knew the lost art of hardening this metal, which has been sought by chemicals for centuries without results. Kincaid realized that to comprehensively explore the entirety of this underground city, he would require assistance. Upon sending a selection of artifacts and his detailed notes to the Smithsonian, Kincaid requested financial and logistical support, recognizing the significance of his archaeological discovery as one of the most profound to date. The Smithsonian, after a few weeks, agreed to provide assistance. Professor S.A. Jordan arrived with a team of approximately 40 scientists, researchers, and laborers ready to undertake the excavation and exploration of the ancient underground city. With increased illumination and manpower, the scientists swiftly realized that the layout of the cave system was not haphazard, but rather meticulously designed and symmetrical. The tunnels all converged towards a central chamber. Within this central chamber stood a grand statue. Over 100 feet from the entrance is the cross hall, several hundred feet long, in which are found the idol or image of the people's god, sitting cross-legged, with a lotus flower or lily in each hand. The cast of the face is oriental, and the carving this cavern. The idol almost resembles Buddha, though the scientists are not certain as to what religious worship it represents. Taking into consideration everything found thus far, It is possible that this worship most resembles the ancient people of Tibet. Consequently, Kincaid's team, acknowledging the significance of the discovery, christened the complex the Citadel. Among the larger rooms uncovered was the crypt. The walls slanted at an angle of approximately 35 degrees, with rows of mummies occupying distinct shelves. At the head of each mummy was a small bench, accompanied by copper cups and fragments of broken swords. Some mummies were covered in clay and wrapped in bark fabric. Notably, all the examined mummies thus far were male, implying that this specific section might have served as the barracks for warriors. Kincaid, Jordan, and the Smithsonian team were overwhelmed by the wealth of evidence indicating that this was not merely a remote temple inhabited by a few priests, but rather an extensive city that had accommodated thousands of men, women, and children for several centuries, if not millennia. The pressing question that eluded any conclusive answer was the identity of these ancient inhabitants. 2 points emerged as consensus among the researchers. Firstly, the civilization responsible for constructing the citadel possessed a remarkable level of advancement, surpassing the native tribes that inhabited the region for thousands of years. They exhibited expertise in working with bronze, predating the recognized Bronze Age. Additionally, they demonstrated an understanding of specialized labor divisions and agricultural practices at a time when other societies were still assumed to be hunter-gatherers. These findings challenged the mainstream theories of archaeology and anthropology. The second point of agreement among the researchers was that this enigmatic civilization did not originate locally. Instead, evidence strongly suggests that they had arrived at the Grand Canyon from a distant part of the world, either from Egypt or Asia. Kincaid and Professor Jordan took the initiative to dispatch crates containing artifacts, along with comprehensive notes and illustrations, to the Smithsonian Institution. Kincaid expressed the need for additional resources and an expanded team to facilitate further exploration of the citadel. Regrettably, their request for additional support and resources was declined. Following this decision, all communication from G.E. Kincaid and Professor Jordan ceased, and their whereabouts remain unknown. Is this because they never existed, or because they'd seen too much? Meanwhile, the airspace above the region, which is now known as Kincaid's Cave, is restricted, making it illegal and dangerous to navigate the area surrounding the pyramid and cave on the ground. Official reports from institutions like the Smithsonian have been censored, altered, invalidated, or withdrawn. Despite these measures, people continue to venture into this section of the canyon. Numerous individuals have been arrested, and some have lost their lives while attempting to scale these sacred locations throughout the years. The situation has escalated to the extent that the government finds it necessary to station armed FBI agents inside the entrance of the cave. When we've researched this topic, it's quite difficult to find information about this mysterious explorer. Could this be an indication that he's just a fictional character? The names of G.E. Kincaid and Professor Jordan first appeared on a front-page article of Arizona Gazette on April 5, 1909. It was reported that archaeologists from the Smithsonian Institution found remains of an advanced civilization on the Grand Canyon. However, Smithsonian Magazine states that there are no records confirming the existence of either Kincaid or Jordan.
No Egyptian artifacts of any kind have ever been found in North or South America. I can tell you that the Smithsonian has never been involved in anything like this in the Grand Canyon or anywhere.
Apart from the Arizona Gazette articles, there is no other evidence or mention of these individuals. It is peculiar that there is no verification of their existence from family, friends, or acquaintances. There is a possible connection between Kincaid and Jordan mentioned in a newspaper report from September 22, 1908, in the Lewiston Evening Teller, which refers to a project called the Stites Excursion Project, involving individuals named G.E. Kincaid and W.J. Jordan. Although the names are similar, the initials do not match. It is likely that the names Kincaid and Jordan in the Arizona Gazette article were inspired by this earlier newspaper report. There are two prevailing theories surrounding Kincaid and the narrative of his discovery on the Grand Canyon. The first theory is that the story is an intricate and highly detailed hoax orchestrated by two ambitious explorers collaborating with a local newspaper. However, this hoax theory lacks substantial credibility. Historically, newspapers primarily aimed to inform the public rather than sensationalize events, as they often do in contemporary times. If the journalist had fabricated the entire scenario using his vivid imagination, wouldn't he have sought a national news outlet to amplify the story? If personal fame were the motive, it appears that minimal effort was invested in promoting the narrative. The second theory suggests a deliberate cover-up by entities such as the Smithsonian and other influential powers. According to this notion, these institutions have a vested interest in suppressing any evidence that challenges conventional historical understanding, particularly a discovery of such magnitude. In considering the funding of institutions like the Smithsonian, it begs the question, aside from tax dollars, who else might be contributing to their financial resources? Do you believe that Kincaid existed and was silenced by powerful organizations? Leave a comment and don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Until the next one.
broadcast. So what we're gonna do now is we're gonna bring in Big BJ and see what he's talking about. Y'all hold on a minute. You
Welcome to Real Black Consciousness Forum Podcast. This is Big BJ checking in. Today's conversation, we just going to talk about tricknology, right? We're going to have a good time, beloved. We're going to talk about history. We're going to talk about tricknology, though. You know what I mean? Because, man, I be looking in the comments and I say, you know, these folks, man, they trip our people up. The words, man, that they use, man, the devil. This is a slick guy, man. The devil is a slick guy. You know what I mean? These are slick people, beloved. But we're going to have a conversation. We're going to clear some things up. How about that, right? So in today's conversation, we're going to talk about Native American tribes, right? We're going to talk about American Indian tribes. We're going to talk about First Americans. And we're going to talk about Aboriginal Americans, right? And, you know, we're going to talk about these groups, and we're going to go back, and we're going to do some research, and we're going to figure out how come so many of these tribes are federally recognized, right? And then how many of these other tribes are not federally recognized. And then we're going to say, well, what's the difference between the two, right? Because, you know, beloved, I encourage my people, right, black folks, the American Negro, out the village, out the camp, out the black community. You want to find yourself, beloved, you got to begin to study these federal tribes that are not recognized. That's the Native American tribes you got to start researching, the ones that are not federally or state recognized, right? And then, you know, once you start doing that, beloved, you'll find yourself and you'll find your people. Because we're going to go over the tricknology of the enemy, and he play word games with our people, right? So we just going to, you know, we're going to do this, right? How about this? All right, I'm going to give you guys a name or a couple of agencies I want you just to look up. I just want you to look up. I want you to research. And then we're going to talk about terminology, right? How about that, right? Okay, so I want you guys to look up this. The National Historic Preservation Act of 1966, right? Because they have a guide, and we're going to use that guide for today's conversation, right? The National Historic Preservation Act of 1966, that's coming out of LBJ's program, right? NHPA. And then I want you guys to take a look at the Bureau of Indian Affairs from 1824, right? And I want you to take a look at both of them. The terminology that we're going to use today is the term Indian tribe, right? What does that mean, right? What is the good working definition of that term? We're going to say later what it really means, but we're just going to use the legal definition of that term. When the United States government says Indian tribe, what do they mean? And then we're going to have that conversation, right? It should be understood at the outset that the term, quote unquote, Indian tribe is defined in the NHPA as an Indian tribe, band, nation, or other organized group or community, including a native village, regional corporation, or village corporation that is recognized as eligible for special programs and services by the United States to Indians because of their status as an Indian, right? All right, so that is the legal working definition of Indian tribes. Okay. Therefore, the term Indian tribe refers to a federally recognized Indian tribes, plural. The federal government has a unique political and legal relationship with Indian tribes not shared by non-federally recognized tribes. The federal government has a trust responsibility to Indian tribes that it does not have with non-federally recognized tribes.
And the federal government works with Indian tribes on a nation-to-nation basis, but does not do so with any other indigenous groups, including NHOs, right? So we're going to skip down because we're reading off the guide. We're going to skip down to the last sentence in the next paragraph. And it says, many Indian tribes have strong and long-standing relationships as well as kinship ties with non-federally recognized tribes and recognize them as tribes. All right, let's stop. I want you guys to put a pen on it. You know what I'm talking about? Take that highlighter. Go ahead and hit it with that highlighter, right? Okay, now, we kind of got what is a federally recognized tribe, the working definition out of the way, right? So now we're going to touch in, or we're going to tap into what is a non-federally recognized tribe. We're going to read that working definition, and then we're going to see the difference between the two, right? But I'm going to tell you about black folks before we get even further. I'm going to tell you about I'm going to tell you about our people. I'm going to tell you about the brown man. I'm going to tell you about the red man. And I'm going to tell you about the devil. And I'm going to show you how tricknology works, right? Beloved, my people, black folks, you can trip us up with words. You know what I mean? And what the devil does when he talks to us, he trips us up with words. He will replace a common word with a different word to trip us up. Because he knows if he just speaks to us in a common tone, we can see the game. He just switch words around. He playing semantics. It's the same thing, but we get confused off the words. So that's why I come on Real Black Consciousness Forum podcast. I talk about people groups. I don't say race. I don't use the term race that much. Oh, the white race, the red race, you know what I mean? The brown race, the black race. I don't use the term race so much because my folks, my people, they don't identify with the word race. Black folks don't get the word race. So what I do is I replace the word race with family, because we understand if I say the black family. Because now we can look in the mirror and see the black family. We look in the mirror, we don't see a black race. We look right at our household and we can see the black family. You know what I mean? The word tribe, I've watched us. I've watched our people. The word tribe, it throws us off. We don't really get it. That word tribe is like, it's because, well, what tribe did you come from? Our people be sitting there, goddamn CJ, I don't know my tribe. This is why, right? Check this out, beloved. We're just going to talk, right? Check this out. This is why the devil can be amongst our people, and he'll point at a map and say, look, your people come from over here. You belong to an African tribe, right? And then here you is, your black ass from Memphis, some goddamn New Orleans, Detroit, you know what I'm saying, Little Rock, St. Louis, somewhere, and you just looking at that map. And then you trying to see if you fit into an African tribe, right? You know what I'm saying? And then you come and then, you start searching and you find yourself on Real Black Consciousness Forum podcast. And then you already been around the devil. So when you come on this podcast, you start making comments. You start talking about, no, brother, our tribes come from Africa. Our tribes come from Africa. And I'm like, bro, tribe just means family. And I know, your black ass is from Memphis. So I'm like, how did you, you from Atlanta, bro. How are you a part, or, point out to me your African family. I changed the word on you. And then you start to, well, I don't have no family in Africa. Because I know you don't know that family and tribe means the same thing. You see what I mean? They play word games on us. They have always played word games on us. Because these guys, the devil, he like to play big shot. You and I, beloved, since we was no taller than a grasshopper, you know what I mean? We babies, we kids, we youth in the neighborhood. You know what we did to make money? We cut grass. We just cut grass. We took our lawnmowers, we went door to door, and we cut grass. You know what the devil called that? He said that was landscaping. So we try to go get certain jobs. He say, man, y'all got some landscaping experience? We like, nah, we ain't never did no landscape. We looking clueless. We don't know. It's the one that's among us with knowledge. You say, no, we do that every day, beloved. That's what, when we cutting grass, he's just using a different word to trip you up. You can go to a job. You're a young teenager. You don't know no better. And the devil will ask our babies, do you guys have a customer service experience? He talking to our babies now. And our babies, they scratching their head. We don't know nothing about no customer service. We never did no customer service. But it takes the person with knowledge to come back and say, listen, beloved, damn near everything that you do in life, beloved, in this country is damn near customer service. If you watch somebody car before, that's customer service. If you stood on the corner and sold weed, that's customer service. If you just, everything is customer service. But see, the way that this guy play with these words, he trips our people up. Our people outwatch us. We are tripped up over the word tribe. We're tripped up over the word tribe. Your family reunion is your tribal reunion. It's the same thing. But because we watching this guy's idiot box, and we in his schools, and we reading his books, every time he show us a quote-unquote tribe, is some people looking primitive, jumping around, dancing around, and you know what I mean? And we just we got that image in our mind, so when he asks us what is our tribe, we act like we don't know. But maybe that's a different story for a different day. How about that, right? I'm just talking about, so what I wanted to do is, I wanted to give you guys the first definition of a federally recognized tribe, and I wanted to use the tribe throughout the whole thing. And you know what I'm thinking to myself? Man, a lot of our people, they ain't get that first part. Y'all ain't gonna get it. Because you know what? I was using tribe. Now, I'm going to read the second part. I'm going to talk about what is a non-federally recognized tribe, but I'm not going to use the word tribe. I'm going to use the word non-federally recognized family. And watch how you catch the second half, and you probably didn't catch the first half. Now watch how because it's going to be different when I use the word family. I'm connecting with my people, right? The term that we're looking for is family. When you hear tribe, I don't care if it's on my podcast or somebody else's podcast, I need you as my people to change that word in your mind to clan or kinfolks or family when you hear tribe. That way you give an answer. What tribe you belong to? You a Johnson. You belong to the Johnson tribe. We got a brother from Philadelphia belongs to the Johnson tribe, right? And he called himself the Prince of Pan-Africanism. He ain't got one family. He ain't got no tribal members. They're tripping our people up with the word tribe. I'm watching them. You may not know the original name of your tribe, beloved. That's why you're a Jackson now. That's why you're a Simpson now, right? That's why you're a Washington now. You didn't forget your tribe. You know who your big mama is, right? Your big mama know who her big mama is, right? You know who your aunties and uncles, you didn't forget your tribe. The original name for your tribe may be gone. And you're going to forget that anyway, beloved, because you speak English. You know what I mean? And these, as much as they want you to think, everything doesn't convert over when you go from one language to another. It doesn't, beloved. And then when I start to touch on your last names, because we're going to really have to have that conversation eventually. Names that you think come from Europe, beloved, it's going to blow your mind when I show you that a lot of these names, they don't come from Europe. Many of these names is already here on this land. But it's the word tribe that's throwing our people off. All right, so when we just kind of, because I'm going to read a little more. I want you to, when you start hearing me say tribes, black folks, I'm talking to you because I know you my people. I know what's tripping you up. When you start hearing me say the word tribe, I don't want you to think they got you thinking about Mandingos and somebody, some weird Ashanti and Cherokee and all these names. I don't want you to think of no names. When you hear tribe, I want you to think about your family. Replace the word tribe with family, all right? Because we're going to go into a working definition of what is a non-recognizable tribe. And we're going to read off the guide. Let me go over to it, right? I'm going to pull it up and put it on the screen so we all can see it and just kick back and chill, right? There's a portion that's going to say why some tribes are not federally recognized. All right, so what the devil is saying in his manuscripts is why some families are not federally recognized. That's the conversion I want you to make. When you hear the word tribe, I want you to think clan. I want you to think kinfolks. I want you to think family. And the devil is telling you why some Native American families are not federally recognized. All right, how about that? It says, in at least 14 states, tribal entities are recognized at the state level as having self-government authority outside the federal process. Alabama, Connecticut, Delaware, blah, blah, blah. It's just a bunch of states. We're going to skip down a little bit. It is important to note that unlike the limited number of pathways to federal recognition, states have their own unique process for recognizing tribes, or states have their own unique process of recognizing families. The United States Government Accountability Office has identified approximately 400 non-federally recognized tribal entities in the United States. Let's read it again. The United States Accountability Office have identified approximately 400 non-federally recognized families in the United States. Some non-federally recognized families lost their recognition as a result of federal government actions in the 1950s and 60s that terminated government-to-government relationships with Indian families, making them now ineligible to apply to the Bureau of Indian Affairs for recognition. All right, let's stop. You know how to change that word around a little bit, right? Believe it or not, if I left the word tribe in there, I would have confused a lot of folks. But watch this, though. The devil already told you why your tribe is not federally recognized. He said you lost your recognition as a result of what? His actions as the government, and when? In the 50s and 60s. Did you catch that? He just jumped up and said in the 50s, not even 100 years ago, he just said your family doesn't count. Your family ties to this land does not count. That's all it has to do with. It has nothing to do with your genealogy. It has nothing to do who your family is. It has nothing to do where you're from. It is, I'm the devil and I said so. That's it. So now, the federally recognized tribes are families that he decided to deal with, and the non-federally recognized families are the families he do not want to deal with. It's just as simple as that. These are the families he's going to do business with. He's going to give them benefits and give them a card, and these are the families he decided not to deal with. Now, it doesn't mean that any family is less than anybody else. He's playing tricknology. That's the art of tricknology. He put it in his own, he just wrote it down. He just, hey man, we came in the 50s and 60s, that's just it. All right, if we skip down, he gives examples in the same document, beloved. I'm going to give you the link. I'm going to give it to you. In the same document, he's going to give his reasons why, or examples why he say, well, some of these are non-federally recognized families, right? This is why these families are not recognized. And then he's going to give example 1, 2, 3. He's going to go down to like example 5, right? Now, I'm going to let you in on the trick, what he's doing. He plays a color game. in the examples. If they were too dark, they lost their federal and state recognition as being a true indeed Native American family. Now, let's talk reality. Beloved, I will not have my people be ignorant. There's no way. It doesn't even, the concept doesn't make sense. There's no way you can lose a family status or identity because it's too much quote unquote mixing in. That, beloved, is a process called tricknology. So let me give you an example, right? I'm going to show you how the devil play this game. He gives you two continents, right? You got the American continent, and then you got the African continent, right? All right, now I'm going to show you, I'm going to play a tribal game. This is the word tribe. But I want you to remember, when we hear that word on this podcast, we change that word out for family. Okay. There will never be enough Cherokees, beloved. I don't care how you imagine the Cherokee tribe or the Cherokee family in your mind. I don't care how you envision them. There will never be enough Cherokees or Choctaws or Chickasaws or Seminoles that can go across the Atlantic Ocean, right, and mix in with the Ashantis, so much so to the level that the Nigerian government would no longer recognize the Ashantis as a tribe anymore, or recognize the Ashantis as a family anymore. It'll never happen. In the same breath, through history, he'll tell you and I, right, in the same breath, that he put a bunch of Ashantis on the boat, and a bunch of Igbos on the boat, and a bunch of Mandingos on the boat. You know what I'm saying? And he brought them over as a minority group. You know what I mean? He brought them over as a minority group, and when they got off the boat, they started to mix in with the certain Native American tribes or Native American families. And they mixed in so much that they lost their tribal status. That doesn't even make sense. How can a family of people mix in with another family of people so that other family becomes non-recognizable? He only played that game with us. He only played that game in America. It only works in America. So now, our people, right, what we do, this is what happens subconsciously. What we do is, because we don't belong to a federal recognized family or a state recognized family, we throw away our whole identity of who we are as a people, and then we try to pick up an identity from somewhere across the Atlantic. How could you tell me that you got African? Listen, a brother from America would tell you, a black man now, American Negro, he'll tell you he belongs to an African tribe. When niggas say that, I know they're confused with the word tribe. Tribe don't mean nothing but kin folks. Tribe don't mean nothing but family. You got an African family? Nigga, you from Philadelphia. How do you have an African family? Who was your African family over there? He started picking up Mandingos and Mandinga. He started getting all this stuff. Some old small head told him in the book. He didn't watch it on the movie. Brother, you ain't, all your family, your tribes is here. I watch you every goddamn year run down south to the Carolinas somewhere, to Georgia somewhere, Bama, Mississippi, Louisiana. All your tribal reunions or your family reunions is in this land. Yeah, the devil, he switched up the names to some, not to all. So now you may not know your original tongue. You may not know your original language, but you're still part of your tribe business. You just call yourself Davis now. You got this. You part of the Smith tribe, the Johnson tribe, huh? The Carter tribe. It's no. He's playing word games with you. That's why it's certain way I have to talk to my. Yo, Mr. Muhammad said our people need straight talk. We don't get it. If I came on here another way, our people don't get it. And I'm like, yo, beloved, you want to find out who you is, all you got to do is start to study the tribes that does not have any recognition from the federal government, because 9 times out of 10, that's what you're going to find out. That's who your big mama belongs to. they became too dark, or they was already too dark, and he started playing the color game. And nah, man, you know, we can't be so naive to think that the devil came to this landmass we call the United States, and every single person looked the same way. There were certain Native Americans that had that straight hair, their high cheekbones, you know what I'm saying, their button nose, and then there was others that had the curly hair, with the wide nose, with the big lips. And when explorers got here, they said, man, damn, these folks look like Africans. And then all of a sudden, the ones that look like Africans just disappeared all of a sudden. And then we got one phenotype left in the whole continent? Maybe that's a different story for a different day. Let me go to this guy. I'm going to talk about some examples, and then we just going to kick it. You know what I'm saying? Because it just, we just talking about tricknology. You know what I mean? When you look at the list, right, and we still on the guide, there's a list of federally or non-federally recognized tribes, right? The name of one of them is called the Wanapum tribe, and they're from Washington. And the reason why they're not federally recognized as a tribe, or I should say it, they're not a federally recognized American Indian family, is because they just decided not to deal with the federal government. It's just as simple as that. We ain't going to deal with the government. We cool. Now, I'm going to show you how this works, right? The Wanapum tribe is from Washington. You know what I mean? And then this group may have a migration pattern where they bust up out of there and they go to Arizona, or they move to New Mexico. They move to Texas. They marry a local. The local they have children, and then the children have children. And then you know what we be calling the grandkids? The grandkids say, well, I'm Hispanic now. Their whole identity is gone. See, this game that this devil playing, it just doesn't work for, it's not like it's not just tailor-made for our people. He's playing this game with their people too. You know what I mean? Because, see, when you go through the examples, there's tribes that he's talking about. You know what I'm saying? The Nipmuc Nation out of Massachusetts, that's a tribe. Then at another example, he's talking about the Narragansett tribe. That's another, that's another family, right? Then he talk about the Pamunkey tribe. That's another tribe. That's another family, right? We know the Pamunkey, that's Chris Brown. That's a tribe that Chris Brown belongs to. The singers, the R&B singing, that do all the dancing and all that. Okay, but dig. What you begin to notice is that a lot of these tribes, these families don't have any federal recognition. But if you took that tribe and you split them down the middle, half of them is going to be able to be called, or maybe call themselves, I should say, Hispanic. The other half is eventually going to call themselves African American. And the reason why they don't have any federal recognition as a tribe or as a family, there's no particular reason. The devil just jumped up in the 1950s and 60s and said, hey, we did something we decided to do. We ain't want to do business with all these families. This is all we decided to do. And then everybody else, we're left to pick up the pieces. And instead of us just being and loving the family that we have, we were sold a whole new family we know nothing about. Ain't it interesting that the United States government says, they decided to part ways and not even recognize so many of these Native American tribes or Native American families in the 50s and 60s? What was going on in the 50s and 60s in this country? I don't know. I may have forgot. You just fill me in. What was going on in this country? Civil rights movement, folks marching, folks protesting. But you know what? A new identity for my people has been ushered in. You won't catch none of us talking about we African back in the 50s. It didn't happen. Before the 50s and 60s, it never happened. And then we got some of these civil rights leaders. They got with these small hats. They got a bag. And then they came on out and they advertised a new word amongst us. And we start seeing African American studies pop up at the school all of a sudden. And everything became African. And Now we got our people today, they're looking for their African tribe right now today. They've been digging the whole time. They've been looking for their roots. They're digging. They keep digging, trying to find their roots, and they looking for that ship. And I be telling them, I be tapping them on the shoulder. I said, shit, when you find that ship, you let me know. Because you sure digging for that ship. The devil told you it was the ship that brought you. All right. Well, you keep looking. And when you find it out, you keep, because they play another game. And man, you know, the slave trade is one of the most well-documented things that happened in United States history. And I say that's interesting, you know what I'm saying, because we know 4 devils was involved in the slave trade. We know the Portuguese devil was involved, Spanish devil, French devil, English devil, right? So you got 4 different devils, so that means you should have 4 different languages. So there should be a lot of goddamn documentation all over the place, right? And we see a lot of documentation, and we see a lot of stories. But you know what's interesting? When it's time to find our family on that ship, nobody can find it. We can find everybody else's paperwork now. You know, we've been reading books for the last 30, 40 years. And we can find every kind of piece of paperwork about this ship and that ship. But when it's time to find your family off that ship, you can't find them. Maybe that's a different story for a different day. Man, these folk playing games, beloved. These folks playing games, man. They playing a word game. They telling you straight up, man, these are federally recognized families we're going to rock with. The rest of them, y'all on your own. We ain't going to even rock with y'all. I got a Brown brother, right? One of my Brown brothers, he got a little joke. He say, because he's Mexican, right? He's so-called Mexican. He said, you know, he said, we didn't cross the border. He said, the border crossed us. Born and raised in Texas. His folks ain't come from nowhere. They ain't come from nowhere. His family been here just as whatever the criteria it can take to be an Indian or a federally recognized family. Man, my partner family, he can make the cut. All his generations, they all from Texas. Why he's not federally recognized? The devil just said no. It's no big. They just said no. He's indigenous to this land, but he doesn't call himself Indian. He doesn't call himself Aboriginal. He calls himself Hispanic now. He calls himself Hispanic. But you know what? We underneath the same oppressor. We in the same trick bag because our people been here for generations upon generations upon generations, and we think we African. How about that, man? But one of these days, beloved, our people gonna have to wake up and see they family, they clan, they kindred, and they tribe that they belong to is from here and always been from here. And this territory that we call the United States is the Black Americans' ancestral homeland. That means he can't find nobody out of his line, above ground or under the ground. They all from here. And until he figured that out and she figured that out, that man gonna keep playing that trick in Washington. Peace and black power to your family.
This momentous decree came as a great beacon light of hope to millions of Negro slaves who had been seared in the flames of withering injustice. It came as a joyous daybreak to end the long night of their captivity. But 100 years later, the Negro still is not free. 100 years later, the life of the Negro is still sadly crippled by the manacles of segregation and the chains of discrimination. 100 years later, the Negro lives on a lonely island of poverty in the midst of a vast ocean of material prosperity. 100 years later, the Negro is still languished in the corners of American society and finds himself in exile in his own land. And so we've come here today to dramatize the shameful condition. In a sense, we've come to our nation's capital to cash a check. When the architects of our republic wrote the magnificent words of the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence, they were signing a promissory note to which every American was to fall heir. This note was a promise that all men, yes, black men as well as white men, would be guaranteed the unalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
Okay, everybody, that concludes our broadcast. We got a caller with his hand raised at area code 313, and when I come back, I'm going to open up the line so you can ask a question or comment or whatever you have to do with area code 314. But in the meantime, we'll take another little quick break, and when I come back, we will be right back, okay? Just hold on a minute. We'll be right back. Y'all hold on a minute. We'll be back.
Dark street at night, where wild animals lay low, out of sight. With implements of steel and menacing curses, they endeavor to separate the rich from their purses. The jungle has winners and losers, grinners and sobbers. It's a place where grown men play cops and robbers. The name of the game is hide and seek, where the mean and the strong devour the weak. Where panther and python show their fangs. Oh no, they're not wild animals. They're street gangs.
Dr. Livingston, I presume. Not General, you got you. Dr. Livingston, I presume. Not General, you got you. Dr. Livingston, I presume. Not General,
Now this jungle is a street of walls where people listen with money calls. Computer addicts trying to win while angry ulcers attack from within. Where cougar and impala stalk the streets. Louder voice, the speed of feet. Automated, animated, regulated clones, bending the knee to Mr. Dow and Mr. Jones. Of the milk of human kindness, no one cares. Just the constant struggle of the bull and the bear.
Everybody, let me open up area code 314. 314, you on the air with your questions or comments.
Tarhaka, what's going on? How you doing, sir?
I'm doing just fine, man. You were Bianca, where you been, man?
Oh, I had a lot of stuff to do. But I was listening to that guy. Of course, you know I don't agree with him.
Okay.
I'm gonna tell you. Yeah, you know, that's the old saying that people with the same skin tone is kin. That's just not true. And then where do Alicia Keys fit in with all that? Alicia Keys, you had Colin Powell, Derek Jeter. And see, here's the thing. He made mention about people being mixed. Look at Jerry Rollins. He was the president of the country, but he could not be a paramount chief of the Ashanti because his father was Irish.
All right.
And his mother was Ashanti, Ghana.
Okay.
And that has been that way all the time. They ethnocentric. So, and then you say that in the natives, the Indians, the Indians got rid of the blacks, kicked them out. In 1972, no, in 1979, and then again in 1982. I think it was the Chickasaw that kicked them out in 82, and the Choctaw, and the Cherokee had before then kicked them out, because you had blacks showing up under that same pretense talking about we Indians. So anyway.
Wait, man. I got to set this thing down, but you know what? I'm coming back with part 2. And you got to get here early, man, so they got to close down, man. I got to set it down. It's all over, man. I appreciate you.
I know. Yep. All right, well, look, you sounding good, man. I don't know what that noise is, but you keep up the good work.
No noise?
Sound like chains or something.
Okay, man, I got to go. I'm going to cut you off, man.
You take care of yourself, Tarhaka.
You too, my brother.
I'll see you later.
All right. Bye. All right, everybody. I don't know about no change, but anyway, I'm going to shut the show down. Appreciate it.